Part 10. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Tang Zhongmao. Chapter 91. Ji Chang's was packing things in the car when Guo Junyuan came back. He could clearly feel that her attitude towards him was completely different from before. Although she had not yet reached 100% trust, she was more or less 80% trustworthy. He pretended that nothing had come out, turned around and smiled at Guo Junyuan. Everything is almost packed. I drive during the day, and you and the baby are behind. We usually find a place to rest at night, or we really can't find it. If there is a place, just rest in the car and see if there is anything missing. We can look for it on the way. Guo Junyuan's tone of voice was more than a little softer than before. There is nothing missing at the moment, so that's good. Indeed, Ji Chang's is very considerate. He even brought everything a woman needs during her menstrual period. 5 big boxes were enough. Xiaobao is sleeping. He is still too young and sleeps a lot, which gives adults enough time to do other things. Guo Junyuan asked, I remember there were a lot of books on this car. Are there any teaching skills? Have. Ji Chang's opened the cabinet under the bottom bed. It was filled with books. He then opened the cabinet next to him and asked, what kind of books do you want? Guo Junyuan thought for a while, teach practical skills, those who can learn them now. Ji Chang's nodded and said while looking for the book she wanted. Previously, when Chuan and I were scouting around for food, we found that although many buildings did not collapse, there were too few surviving humans. The main reason was that even if some buildings were not hit, they would be hit by other falling buildings. In addition, it was during the day when the incident occurred, and there were many people outside. The dust falling from the building was enough to make them sick. We explored the surrounding area and could count the people we met on one hand. Come over. According to normal circumstances, when such a major accident occurs, the army should come out to rescue, but it took so long that it didn't wait. Chuan and I guessed that either the military was busy protecting itself, or there was no manpower at all. Now cities have basically become forests, and the countryside is probably the same, but there is land in the countryside. Now the plants we encounter along the way are 10 times or even bigger than before, but these plants can't eat much, so the countryside is different. There is land in the countryside, and crops are grown on the ground. Although we may encounter wild animals and plants when we go to the countryside, at least we have something to eat. He found a book about making a textile machine and handed it to Guo Junyuan. Just this one. I basically have all the tools and materials here. I'll find them for you later. Nowadays, people buy clothes directly. Even in rural areas, there probably won't be any fabric. Guo Junyuan took the book and asked, are those crops still edible? I think the plants now are completely different from the plants in the past. Are they poisonous? I have done experiments, and basically all crops are edible. For example, green onions and leeks are just much larger in size than before, but the taste has not changed, and there is no attack phenomenon. As Ji Chang spoke, he took out a glass bottle from the cloth bag behind the driver's seat. There was a small branch of a vine inside, waving his body in the bottle. Seeing that Guo Junyuan was startled and subconsciously leaned back to block Xiaobao, Ji Chang's quickly comforted her, don't be afraid, this vine is different from the one that attacked you before. Even if it is released, it immediately overgrows our car and does nothing else. That sounds scary, okay. Guo Junyuan's body became even stiffer, and she stared at the vine as if she were looking at some prehistoric beast. Ji Chang's put the bottle back helplessly. Seeing Guo Junyuan's expression relaxed a little, he said, its weakness is that it cannot climb the glass. Before the end of the world, this kind of vine was a very small variety and could only cover a car at most. The size of a window, they are actually very strange. They can grow with just a little water, but once there is no water, they will wither and die immediately. In the past, this kind of vine was used as an ornamental plant and was kept in fish tanks by fish farmers, because it can climb on glass, it can also climb on rockery rocks. I found that all its characteristics have not changed after the mutation. For example, it still relies on water and still cannot climb on glass. Knowing that this vine had weaknesses, Guo Junyuan became visibly more relaxed. She leaned forward slightly and found a shallow layer of water at the bottom of the glass bottle. The roots of the vine are floating on the water, and the upper body is almost upright, with not even a small leaf leaning against the glass. Ji Changs added, actually, most plants are not scary. As long as we master their characteristics, not only can they not hurt us, but they can sometimes be used by us, for example. He opened the car door and placed a small bowl on the shelf on the right side of the door. The bowl was filled with water. Then he opened the glass bottle in his hand and poured the vine that was dancing wildly into it. The roots were rooted in the bowl. The branch was pulled by Ji Chang so that it lay on the car body. Without the shackles of glass and having a source of water, the vine suddenly grew wildly and began to climb towards the roof of the car at a speed visible to the naked eye, but they all avoided the place next to the glass strip. Guo Junyuan's eyes widened in shock, and she stood up unconsciously. She walked to the car door and watched as the vine slowly crawled through various parts of the car body as if it was controlled, bypassing all the places it shouldn't climb, and finally stop where you need to stop. Now, if you look at this RV from a distance, it basically blends in with the surrounding grass. Oh my God! She covered her mouth with surprise on her face. It actually got around those things that shouldn't be crawled. It's almost as if it is alive and thinking. Of course there is no such thing as thinking. Ji Changs explained, after I discovered the characteristics of this vine, I put glass strips on the car where I didn't want it to crawl. The place where it was given water was directly connected to the car body. If something unexpected happened and the glass strip fell, it would start to. If you climb on other parts of the car, this shelf will be removed, and it will die immediately if there is no water source, so it is very safe. As he spoke, he took out his scissors, cut off a small branch of the vine, and threw it into a glass bottle. Cut branches from this vine will survive as long as they have water, so just have a backup ready and you can wilt it back at any time. He continued, in the past, it could cut off branches and survive, but it needed to be carefully raised. Now it may have mutated, and it can survive easily. Even if it is kept in a glass bottle, it will not die. Ji Changs shook the glass bottle in his hand and looked at Guo Junyuan. How is it? Is it very convenient? Guo Junyuan looked at the green-looking RV in front of her and suddenly realized, as long as we have this kind of vine in our hands, we can quickly hide wherever we are. Yes, some birds will look down from the sky and then fly down to catch food. They don't know solar panels and always fly down to peck at them. It's very annoying. But now there is this kind of vine. It's different. Although it's not lethal, but it looks like another vine that feeds on birds, and those birds are very smart now and will never fly down. There are also the anesthetics I gave you before. These anesthetics are extracted from another plant. Their lifestyle is similar to the Venus flytrap. They will lure prey to come to them and then open their leaves to swallow them. In order to prevent the prey from to escape, they automatically secrete a liquid that narcotizes their prey. In the past, this kind of plant could only catch flies and mosquitoes. After the mutation, its appetite is much greater than before. Similarly, the effectiveness of their secretions is also many times more powerful than before. I extracted the secreted liquid and it needs to be diluted before it can be used. I extracted its seeds and planted them in the future to extract the anesthetic. After Ji Changs finished speaking, he put down the glass bottle and took out another bottle. This time it contained some seeds instead of vines. He handed the seeds to the curious Guo Junyuan and said, "This is also a plant like a flytrap. In order to catch prey, its leaves are full of sharp thorns, which are used to pierce the struggling prey. Now it can grow to almost half a person. It is tall and grows very fast. Just put it in the soil and water it, and it will grow in about 3 days. It is also aggressive to humans. Guo Junyuan held the bottle and looked at the seeds inside in confusion. The vine in the front can be used for concealment, and the one in the back can be used as an anesthetic. What about this one? Ji Chang's, its spikes can grow back into shape. The size is almost the same as the arrows in my bow. And because the spikes are very sharp and have barbs on them, they can be used directly as arrows without polishing. The key point is that it can grow again. If you cut one off, a new one will grow out in 5 days, so it can be recycled. When the time comes, we will raise a batch of them and cut off all the sharp thorns at a specific time. After 5 days, we can start cutting again, and we don't have to make arrows by ourselves, and the arrows they make are not very lethal. After speaking, Ji Changs took the bottle in Guo Junyuan's hand again and touched it with some cherishment. The only drawback is that it takes time to grow. I will dig some soil under it later and we will plant it today. It was a waste of time when we used an arrow on the way here and had to stop to retrieve it, but having it here can save a lot of trouble. Guo Junyuan. When she lived in that office building before, everyone would cheer each other up carefully every time they went out. They would hide 800 meters away when they saw some weird-looking plant. They talked about these plants with fear and horror. She never expected that one day she would be sitting here, listening to Ji Chang's talk about 800 ways to use mutated plants. Ji Chang's, don't worry, most of those mutated plants have such a foundation before, but they are just enlarged many times. For example, the food we usually eat does not have such bad problems at all. Although there may be many animals in our hometown, but at least there won't be large beasts like lions and tigers for the time being. Nowadays, apart from that kind of special boundary, which rural area can have lions and tigers in the mountains next to it? After all, in general, humans in the village have long since designated the mountains as their own property, and wild animals avoid people. At most, they see rabbits, pheasants, hedgehogs, etc., and not even deer and wild boars. The reason why the city suddenly turned into a paradise for animals was not because of the zoo. There are all kinds of animals in the zoo, there are many lions, tigers, and so on, even elephants. Anyway, it is something that no one can imagine but no one can see. On the second day of the apocalypse, Ji Changs also saw a group of peacocks, but later on never seen it again, but I did see a lot of peacock feathers. He guessed that all the peacocks were dead. After all, although the peacock has a long neck, its body is still quite plump. It may have wings, but it can't fly. Even if it can fly, it can only fly a small distance. If it doesn't eat such a delicious but fast prey, who will eat it? It's different in rural areas. Although there is a lot of vegetation, there are still very few exotic plants. For example, most of the weird plants that Ji Changs and the others are seeing now are not native to China, or not from this area at all, but some people keep them for fun. The result may be that the building collapsed or something, seeds or plants. It landed on the ground, and took advantage of this momentum to grow and multiply. There are not many young people in rural areas. Everyone is busy farming, watching TV, and playing Mahjong. Who has time to play with this thing? Even if the vegetation is growing suddenly and has become a hotbed for large animals, it will not be long before they appear in the mountains. After Ji Changs and Guo Junyuan analyzed this, Guo Junyuan understood. That's true. When she was a child, she could occasionally see wild rabbits in the mountains. Later, when she returned home from high school, she could no longer see them. Rabbits are highly prolific and small in size. There must still be some, but they are slightly larger beasts. It's really impossible. She and Ji Changs both made a tacit agreement not to mention whether the village where their elders lived might have been hit by a meteorite. Chinese people value their family very much. When something happens, their first reaction is to go home and return to their parents, especially in the situation where they cannot contact their family members, even if they know that the elders in the family may die from a meteorite. If it rains, even if there is only a 0.00001% chance, most people will still choose to go home. Guo Junyuan had a child with her and didn't have enough supplies, otherwise she would have found a car and gone home directly. Among the people following behind, Li Hechuan was with his parents, while Fu Hao and Zhang Shenzhen's parents had died and there was no longer any ties. Therefore, the group of them was considered a successful team and drove together to the hometown of Ji Chang's and Guo Junyuan. Several families are considered to have some special abilities. Let alone Ji Chang's, he knows a little bit about everything and is basically equivalent to a Baidu encyclopedia. Li Hechuan is good at playing with computers and has strong hands-on skills. He was the one who put up those shelves before. In addition, he is also very good at being a bait and knows how to run to show off his body to a greater extent. The meat is delicious. Zhang Shengsheng is a medical student. Although she has not graduated yet, her grades are good and she can still feel headaches and fevers, even though she is not very confident. As for why her child has not graduated yet when she is 5 years old. After 5 years of bachelor's degree, 3 years of master's degree and 3 years of doctorate, I was ready to go to the hospital, but this happened. The three families all have their own abilities, and they all know what they are doing when they travel together. Oh no, there is another one who is incompetent. Ji Chang stood half out of the car door and looked at the small shabby car behind him. Is that Chen's Lu? Guo Junyuan also got out of the car door and looked back a little doubtfully. She happened to see Chen Lu chewing a pack of instant noodles. While eating, he looked towards them and immediately looked away with disgust on her face. Kai, with a very strange look on his face. It was like seeing something weird. Guo Junyuan. Forget it, don't argue with him, after all, his brain circuit doesn't seem to be normal. She guessed, maybe he also wants to go home. Isn't he from the same village as you? I guess so. Isn't Li Hechuan's car a little crowded? Let's see if Chen's Lu can ride with us. Then Fu Hao and his wife can go to Chen's Lu's car, so that it won't be crowded. Guo Junyuan was a little surprised that Ji Chang's actually offered to let Chen Lu go with them. Didn't he and Chen's Lu never deal with each other? What do you think of me like that? Although he and I are mortal enemies, we are from the same village after all. We will come along if we can. Moreover, Zhang Shengsheng also said that he gave you gauze before you were injured. We can't let him think that I owe him a favor, and taking him with me this time can be regarded as repaying the favor. Ji Chang spoke forcefully, but in Guo Junyuan's eyes, he was trying his best to hide his good intentions. Her eyes softened, and she felt like she was seeing Nagasawa in college again. At that time, she agreed to Nagasawa's pursuit, not only because he was handsome and gentle, but also because he once found a litter of abandoned kittens on a rainy day. He wanted to take them into the school dormitory but no pets were allowed, so he had no choice but to do so. Asking her if there was anything she could do, they finally gave the litter of kittens away for adoption. Guo Junyuan likes small animals very much and has rescued milk cats in the past. Therefore, she has a good impression of Ji Chang's who can also rescue such small animals that will die if not rescued. After that, she naturally agreed to Ji Chang's pursuit. When they first fell in love, they had agreed to raise a cat together after they got married. However, after they got married, Ji Chang said that he had to work hard and had no time to take care of the cat, so they never kept it. Later, their careers finally stabilized and they had money, but Guo Junyuan did not. Just happened to be pregnant. Later, she and Ji Chang's had an emotional crisis, and she began to suspect that Ji Chang's was cheating. Chen Lu persisted in telling him that Ji Chang's was disguising, and she gradually became really suspicious. But sometimes, doubts are defeated by the memories of the past. How could Ji Changs be that kind of person who would hold an umbrella for a milk cat and get wet all over, just waiting for the mother cat who would never appear again? And now, this idea has been reinforced again. Ji Chang stood up to go out. I'll go talk to him. No, if you two don't deal with it, don't start arguing again. I'll go. Guo Junyuan understands how much Ji Chang's dislikes Chen Lu, and almost everyone also knows how unhappy Chen Lu is with Ji Chang's. It would be strange if these two people didn't have an earth-shaking quarrel when they collided. Ji Chang sat down happily. That's fine, you go ahead. Tell this boy that we are just returning a favor. If he doesn't want to go with us, forget it. It's not a surprise. Guo Junyuan glanced at him helplessly, feeling that the two of them were the same. Normally everything they do is normal, but when they meet each other they immediately become elementary school students. When she was in college, every time she watched the two of them arguing with each other, she could imagine how they got along when they were in elementary school. Don't worry, I'm going. If you're worried, just stand at the car door and watch. Ji Changs waved his hand. Why am I worried about you? Chen Lu is trying to pry me into a corner, but your vision is not that bad. Your taste is so bad, so bad. Weren't you normal when we were freshmen? How could you look at someone like Ji Changs, who looks like a dog on the outside but is carefree and sentimental on the inside and can only show off? Chen Lu felt like he was suffocating. And look at what you said to Zhang Shengshen before. He did all those things because he loves Xiaobao so much. Oh my god, I love Xiaobao even more than he does. Don't you remember? I remember, when Xiaobao was 1 month old, I found out that Ji Changs did not buy the longevity lock. I bought the longevity lock. I specially asked someone to consecrate it to the master at Chang'an Temple, and I paid a full 20 yuan for Shunfeng. It was sent by express delivery. Where is Ji Changs? Not to mention the longevity lock, he didn't even buy an ordinary lock. Is this his biological father? Guo Junyuan looked at Chen Lu, who was getting angry again after talking, and was a little bit dumbfounded. The longevity lock is Chang's. He doesn't believe in this kind of thing. He is his own son. How can he not feel pain? Listen to his nonsense. Before the college entrance examination, I didn't know who went all the way to Mount Tai to pray for Buddha in order to get good grades. Moreover, it is the rule of our village that children must wear longevity locks when they are full moon. He and I both had it when we were young. Saying that a child can only be safe if he has a longevity lock, but he doesn't even buy it for Xiaobao, how can he love Xiaobao? Guo Junyuan and others didn't have this rule, so she didn't quite understand Chen Dailu's precise words. She could only skip this topic for the time being. Stop talking about this. You haven't replied to me yet. Let's team up and go home, okay? If we don't form a team, no one in this life can put me and Ji Changs into the same team. I, Chen Lu, will not go with Ji Changs no matter how difficult the journey home is. I didn't say we'd go together. We're in the RV in front. The main thing is that you and Fu Hao make a statement together, and then the 3 cars go together. Chen Lu refused. Then I don't dare to do it. I will never team up with Ji Changs. This guy is very smart. Who knows if he will sell me out? Let me tell you, when we were in college, I personally saw him squatting on the ground with an umbrella. There was a litter of kittens in front of him. He just watched them get wet in the rain and did not hold an umbrella for the kittens. I wanted to go up and take the kittens away. He also said that I was too much. Who are you meddling in other people's business? This kind of person is so cold-blooded and ruthless, I don't believe him. Just as he finished speaking angrily, he saw Guo Junyuan in front of him looking even more helpless. Where did you hear that Nagasawa saved a litter of cats and would rather get wet than hold an umbrella for them? Chen Dailu. No, I mean I saw him holding an umbrella by himself instead of holding an umbrella for the cat. I know, I know, no, Chen Lu, please stop being like this. You are not a bad person, and you are very nice to others. Why do you insist on doing this to Nagasawa, and distorting the truth like this? Nagasawa, he has a bad relationship with you, but his character cannot be changed by twisting the facts and making up things. Chen Dailu. He almost poked his finger into his nostril. I distorted the facts? Me. Okay. Guo Junyuan also knew how dark Chen Lu was about Ji Chang's. She waved her hand and said, stop talking about this. Are you really not going to come with us? Not leaving. Chen Lu firmly refused. He has a lot of backbone. If he doesn't want to work with Ji Chang's, he won't work with Ji Chang's. Seeing his firm attitude, Guo Junyuan had no choice but to turn around and leave when she saw Ji Chang's coming. Junyuan, you go back first and I'll talk to him. Guo Junyuan was a little worried that the two of them would fight, but she still chose to believe her husband, nodded and went back to the car. Ji Chang's, who stayed behind, looked at Chen Lu, who looked wary, and without saying much, went straight to the topic. You really don't want to go together? Chuan, that fat young man, he is very capable and did it himself. A simple monitoring alarm, even if we sleep at night, if something steps into the range, the alarm will sound immediately. Chen Dailu. Zhang Shengsheng is a medical student and a doctor. She can cure any headache or fever. Chen Dailu, this. We also have a plant in the car that can be used as an arrow. Bows and arrows can be used to shoot prey. You don't have to worry about running out of food along the way. Chen Dailu, well. Seeing that he was still hesitant, looking like he wanted to agree but felt embarrassed, Ji Chang said, we still have gasoline reserves in the car. Chen Lu Miao smiled. Okay, when will we set off? I'll be on call at any time. Backbone. You can't eat it, so why do you want it? Ji Chang's glanced at him condescendingly. Hey, I knew you would agree. Chen Dailu. Bah, a fool would not agree. Ji Chang's went back and told Guo Junyuan the news that Chen Lu had agreed. Guo Junyuan was very happy. After all, Chen Lu had helped her and they were still classmates. It would be best if they could go home safely together. While I was happy, I was also somewhat understanding. Chen and Lu, who were so repulsive to Nagasawa, agreed, which meant that he didn't know what kind of person Nagasawa was, otherwise how could he agree? Hey, Chen Lubi is good at everything, but in Kuronagaze, he makes up lies for Kuronagaze, and is too persistent in making up lies and all kinds of brainwashing. Sure enough, jealousy and the desire to cuckold Nagasawa blinded his small green eyes, otherwise there is no way to explain it. See, he clearly knows Nagasawa is a good person. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Tang Zhonmao. Chapter 92. Chapter 21. The group of people walked home together. Ji Chang's and Guo Junyuan drove the RV at the beginning, with an off-road vehicle in the middle, and Li Hechuan's family inside. Behind them were Chen Lu and Zhang Shengsheng Fu Hao. Fu Hao's Zhang Shengsheng's children are sometimes sent to the RV. It's quite boring for such an older child to stay in the car every day. Ji Chang's RV has a TV and he can watch cartoons. Moreover, Guo Junyuan likes children very much. He looks very close to me. He can watch cartoons and have snacks to eat. He doesn't have to squeeze into a small car seat and can sleep directly on the bed when he feels sleepy. After so many days, the little guy missed his parents except for the first few nights, but later he stopped thinking about his childhood. Chen Lu lived a happy life. When I lived in an office building before, I would catch cold at night and cook all day long. If it weren't for his diamond iron stomach, I would have eaten up my stomach. When I went out, I wished I had 10 ears and 20 pairs of eyes, so that I could hear and see in all directions. Sixth Road, just today he felt like he was going to have a nervous breakdown. It's different now. When driving with a large group of people during the day, they would take turns to sit on the roof of the car and look around with binoculars. If they found any prey, such as rabbits and pheasants, they would shoot them with bows and arrows, like that. If you want to plant large animals, such as deer or cattle, you can stop and hunt them. Of course, if you encounter a lion, tiger, or elephant, you will definitely run away. The elephants were fine, but the lions and tigers were very aggressive, not to mention their size, and they had never heard of how to prepare lion and tiger meat to make it delicious. On the 10th day after setting off, Ji Chang's caught a ewe that was lactating but had no lambs nearby for some reason. He eagerly wanted to keep it to produce milk for his 2 children. So in the days that followed, when Chen Lu was driving, he looked numbly at the tricycle in front of him that was being pulled by an off-road vehicle. No one was driving the tricycle, only a rope was tied to the front of the tricycle, and the ewe was placed on the large vehicle behind. The sheep still had fresh and tender grass under its feet. It could nibble on the grass when it got bored standing on it. As for Chen Lu, he could only look at the sheep. He really doubted whether Ji Chang's was messing with him on purpose. Although Ji Chang's gave a very good reason when the tricycle was arranged in the middle, because there was too much grass along the way, and the grass was still too bumpy when the RV ran over it. The off-road vehicle behind it crushed it twice before it was slightly flat. First, in order to prevent the ewe from producing milk from being frightened and bumpy and causing the children to have no milk to drink, of course she had to be left behind. And why not stay behind Chen Lu? There are so many wild beasts outside now. If you leave the sheep behind and no one is watching, you might be eaten by an animal that comes out of nowhere without paying attention. But if you put it in front of Chen Lu, he will always be there. Look, even if there is any emergency, you can stop and rescue immediately. Reasonable and convincing. Every day when I drive, I can see a sheep in front of me either eating grass or sleeping. Sometimes it will groom itself. At a certain moment, when I look up, I can see Chen Dailu, who is solving physical problems. Ji Chang's definitely did it on purpose. He knew that this vicious, scheming guy with sinister written on the left side of his face and sinister written on the right side of his face wanted to disgust him all the time. After chatting with Guo Junyuan last time, Chen Dailu returned to his car and realized what Guo Junyuan meant by what he said. What he saw was Ji Chang squatting next to the little kittens, holding an umbrella and refusing to save them, watching helplessly as the kittens got wet in the rain. However, Guo Junyuan received a call from Ji Chang's, and rushed over to find that he was getting wet in the rain trying to hold an umbrella for little Naneo, and did not move just to wait for the mother cat. Chen Lu circled around in his mind and knew the cause and effect. At that time, the competition between him and Ji Chang's for the identity of Guo Junyuan's boyfriend was at its peak. The two of them were indistinguishable, he felt. Ji Chang's must have been trying to outcompete him, so he shamelessly took advantage of the little one. Milk cat. He is so selfish, of course he will not get wet in the rain for the sake of the kittens. He only needs to count the time after calling Guo Junyuan, and then hold an umbrella for the kittens, creating a feeling of getting wet in the rain just to hold an umbrella for the kittens. The illusion is enough. This man is unsurprisingly shameless. Chen Lu firmly believed in his own judgment. He saw Ji Chang's do that with his own eyes. Can what he saw with his own eyes be false? Absolutely not. But Guo Junyuan. Even if she has bad eyesight, her ability to understand is so weak. Every time he tried to tell her the truth, she would look at him quietly with eyes that said I understand and hey why don't you give up yet? Chen Lu always gets hairy every time he is looked at. He just wanted to install a retracement device on himself, and then go back in time to let Guo Junyuan take a good look at the truth. It's a pity that there is no such thing in this world. Feeling that everyone else was drunk, Chen Lu felt empty, lonely, and cold, feeling quite sad and lonely as if he was in the cold from a high place. And just when he was looking at the stars and the moon but not at Ji Chang's, They encountered another car after traveling for 13 days and had not reached their destination due to the need for careful reconnaissance of the route and those obstructive plants. The car stopped in place, and from the direction of the RV Ji Changs drove, it was still possible to vaguely see a man sitting in the passenger seat. He took out his walkie-talkie, explained the situation, pulled out a long knife from the weapon box, and got out of the car cautiously. As a result, he was delighted as soon as he arrived. He was an old acquaintance. Ji Changs did not take back the knife, only hung it to one side, and then knocked on the car window. The person inside seemed to hesitate for a while before slowly rolling down the window, revealing a young and handsome face with an extremely pale face with cold sweat. He was the president of the club that the original owner joined, and he was also the person that the girl that the original owner liked. Hu Hao, what a coincidence. Ji Changs had a look of surprise on his face and said hello to him. When Hu Hao, who was sitting in the car, saw that it was Ji Changs, his originally vigilant expression relaxed for a moment, and he shouted in surprise, "Senior, why is it you? My family and I and a few companions plan to go home together, so we walked this way." "What's going on with you?" Ji Changs put his head in and didn't miss the bone-deep wound on Hu Hao's right thigh. Hu Hao was obviously not wary of him, so he told him all about his situation with great trust. It turned out that on the first day of the apocalypse, he happened to be with the girl the original owner liked. The two went home together, and found that the building where their parents lived had been hit by a meteorite. After searching around, no one was found. After despair, he would definitely Hu Hao's grandparents. They found a car together and supported each other along the way until now. However, they were so unlucky that they encountered a tiger the day before yesterday. It was a hungry tiger. The two of them were not as prepared and equipped as Ji Changs. During the fight with the tiger, Hu Hao was bitten on the thigh. He can't walk at all now, nor can he go out to look for food like he used to. As a result, the house leaks and it rains all night, and the car runs out of gas. The girl the original owner likes can only go out to find the food that the two of them need. Car oil. Originally, Hu Hao couldn't move around in this situation, but she could. She could still survive if she left him and walked away, but she managed to hold on and didn't leave Hu Hao alone. After the car parked here the day before yesterday, she went out alone to look for him frequently. Food and car gas. Hu Hao wanted to help her but was unable to do so, so he could only sit in the car and wait. As a result, after waiting and waiting, Ji Changs and the others came. "That's it, it's okay. It'll be fine if you meet us. We're friends after all. I have gasoline in my car. I'll give it to you. If you're on the road these days, you can follow our car. It's quite safe." Ji Chang's words were so kind that Hu Hao was immediately grateful. "Thank you, senior. If we hadn't met you, we really don't know what we would have done. I'm going to get the medicine box from the car to help you treat your wounds. My wife and children are here too. Haven't you always been curious to see them? This time you have a chance." Before the end of the world, Hu Hao had said several times that he wanted to meet his sister-in-law and nephew, but when he met, it was equivalent to meeting the girl, so the original owner kept making excuses not to agree. Ji Changs had no such scruples. He turned around to get the medicine box, called Guo Junyuan down, and introduced him enthusiastically. "Junyuan, this is Hu Hao, my junior and the president of the club I joined before. The reason why I became a member of the Yubei clan is that I joined this club first. Hu Hao, this is your sister-in-law, Guo Junyuan. You can just call me sister-in-law. This is your nephew, whose nickname is Xiaobao." In such a desolate and lawless place, this introduction method as before the apocalypse successfully made Hu Hao's nose sore, and he quickly squeezed out a smile. "Hello, sister-in-law." Guo Junyuan smiled and nodded to him. She was now completely relieved about Ji Chang's, but seeing Hu Hao's reaction made her feel more reassured. After all, Ji Chang said that the girl liked Hu Hao, and Hu Hao seemed to be interested in her as well. How could a man have a good attitude toward his love rival? Just look at Chen's Lu Bulletin. Hu Hao's reaction showed that Nagasawa had never had anything happen to that girl before. Of course, she never imagined that there were people who were too upright to see any explanation. Ji Chang's opened the medicine box and began to give Hu Hao anesthesia and sew it up. The wound was really painful. Looking at Hu Hao, he was a tall and strong young man before the end of the world. Now he is as thin as a bamboo pole. It can be seen that they have not had an easy time along the way. Oh, how miserable! When he thought that Hu Hao was not yet 20 years old, and that he had almost been stabbed by the original owner before, and yet he was so confident to him, whether he was lying or not, a feeling of fatherly love arose in his heart, which was quite gentle. Comforted, don't worry too much. Our convoy has food and drink. I have enough medicine for injuries and everything else. When we leave, I can also give you some of my homemade anesthetics, which are very useful for hunting prey. From the end of the world to the present, apart from the girl he liked, Ji Chang's was the first human being that Hu Hao felt friendly to. He was so moved and not very good at talking that he could only say thank you. While waiting for Ji Chang's to treat his wounds and go back with Guo Junyuan couldn't help but sigh, this young man is honest. Yeah, I just deal with him because I think he's good. This is true. Seeing that the convoy had stopped early to prepare a meal, Chen Lu, who was at the back, curiously came down to look at the car and asked Zhang Shengsheng what was going on with the car and whether there were new team members. Zhang Shengsheng said, it's someone Gge knew before. He seems to be the president of the club he joined. His name is Hu Hao. Hu Hao? Isn't that the case for Nagay's love rival? Great, great. Just when he thought he was the only one who could see Ji Chang's true face, God sent Hu Hao. What great news! He was so excited that he hurried towards the car, intending to tactfully inquire whether Hu Hao also knew Ji Chang's true identity. As soon as they arrived, they heard Hu Hao saying to Li Hechuan, yes, the senior is very nice. Although we are a bit different in age, we have a good relationship. The senior just said he would take care of me. There are very few such good people nowadays. Chen Dai Lu. He turned around expressionlessly, sat down on his car and stared at the grazing sheep in front of him. A bunch of blind people, bah. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Tang Zhonmao. Chapter 93. Ji Chang's and Hu Hao had a great conversation. He did not take the initiative to invite Hu Hao to rest in the RV, and Hu Hao himself did not mention it. After all, the two of them said they had a friendship before, but the friendship was not deep enough to share with each other. Now that they met in this situation, Ji Chang's pulled him out of love, and even if he didn't help him, it was his duty. Although Hao is an upright person, he still has some sense of propriety. And he still has to wait in the car for the person he likes to come back. Knowing that they had no food, Ji Chang's asked Li Hechuan to move a box of instant noodles and a bucket of mineral water from the car to their car, and also gave them gasoline. It can be said that everything was done well. Hu Hao was already very grateful to him. He watched Ji Chang's return to the RV after delivering the things and thanking him. He looked back at the things in the car, and the gratitude on his face did not fade for a while. I really didn't expect that the senior would be so generous and friendly, and even give him food under such circumstances. Moreover, coupled with Li Hechuan's compliments to Ji Chang's, Hu Hao easily believed that Ji Chang's was such a person. But think about it, he could see in the past that the seniors were quite nice. Although he was older than them, he was very energetic and actively asked to join the club. Every time the club went out for activities, he would always be there with a sea of people from work, chasing people. Moreover, when the club needed any funds, he took the initiative to pay for them, in order to show his strong financial resources in front of his sweetheart. Hu Hao never looked at age when making friends. He had a crush on Ji Chang's before and wanted to be friends. However, he didn't know why, even though Ji Chang's was nice to other people in the club, especially girls, he was always tepid towards him. Indifferent and indifferent. Hu Hao didn't hold grudges and didn't take it seriously. He just thought that the two of them might not get along with each other. But when Ji Chang's treated him so uniformly, he immediately felt that the senior also appreciated him, but he just didn't show it. It was lifeless, but a senior suddenly appeared and gave away all the things he needed. Hu Hao was so happy that he opened the car window and waited for the girl he liked to come back. The girl's name is Zheng Qianqian. She has a nice name and a good-looking person. Her family is in good condition. Although she is pampered, she has not raised her to be a silly girl. If nothing goes wrong, she will study in her own company after graduation, and then successfully inherit the company. Her IQ and character are very good, and it stands to reason that she can live a good life no matter where she is. As a result, the end of the world has come. In such a place where wild beasts run rampant and towering trees are everywhere, and roads are covered and cities are completely replaced, IQ and character are important, but the most important thing is the value of force. Unfortunately, Zheng Qianqian is petite and not very strong, so he doesn't have much force value at all. Before, she and Hu Hao walked together. Hu Hao was very strong and could fight a lot. She was responsible for directing the terrain map and planning the route to calculate how long the food and car fuel stored would be enough for the two of them to live. It had been planned well. According to Zheng Qianqian's deduction, they should be at the East Bridge at the moment, and there was a gas station and a supermarket there. They could just drive there to replenish food and car oil. As a result, Hu knew that the road leading to Dongdaeqiao was cut off. Yes, it wasn't covered up, it was cut off directly. They had no choice but to find another way. The worst outcome would be to abandon the car and walk after running out of gas. Although walking might be much more difficult than driving, it was still a way. Who knew that misfortune never comes singly? Hu Hao was injured. Not to mention walking, even resting in the car would be so painful that he couldn't sleep. He was left in such a wilderness. He couldn't drive, he was almost out of food, and he had no medicine or gauze. Sanitizing without alcohol is nothing. Hu Hao wanted Zheng Qianqian to leave alone, but how could she leave him alone? Not to mention that she liked Hu Hao, and Hu Hao had been protecting her along the way, but even if she really left alone, what would be the fate of a young girl alone in this world? Her chance of survival is less than 20%, and out of the 20%, there are still 18 people who are worse off than dead. Zheng Qianqian is not as innocent as Hu Hao. He thinks that everyone can help each other as human beings. In a world without legal shackles, there will always be some people who abandon their conscience. She had a hard time looking for things this time, but she actually found a place to refuel. Zheng Qianqian got a bucket of oil and carried it back with difficulty. Of course, the fuel is not enough, but they can refuel before driving over, and continue moving forward with enough reserves. Because she saw the hope of living, Zheng Qianqian was in a good mood. But the corners of his lips that were raised because of his good mood calmed down cautiously when he saw several cars parked not far from their car. She frowned and didn't move forward. She hid in the grass and looked at their car. After looking for a long time, she found that Hu Hao was sitting upright inside. Then she breathed a sigh of relief. She carefully avoided those cars and tried her best to avoid them. He walked towards their car quietly and covertly. On the roof of the RV, Li Hechuan was sitting on top with a telescope to keep watch. He immediately became alert when he noticed movement in the grass, and drew his bow and pointed it in Zheng Qianqian's direction. Along the way, they would occasionally encounter wild beasts that were curious about the car or wanted to attack after smelling human scent. These wild beasts were not stupid. They never approached the car directly and openly, but they were all carefully ambushed. During the day, they would take turns keeping watch to avoid being caught off guard by these wild beasts. At night, as long as the torches were lit, the wild beasts would naturally not dare to approach for fear of fire. Let it go. He was about to shoot an arrow in that direction when Ji Chang's reached out and put down the bow he had drawn, took a bite of the pancake and waved his hand. That's a person. Li Hechuan was startled and looked carefully again. Sure enough, they found that it was indeed a person heading towards the car where Hu Hao was sitting. She still looked like a girl, although she was not dressed like a girl at all. He suddenly realized, is this the girl with Hu Hao? Are you treating us as bad guys? Ji Chang's, it's a good thing that she's vigilant. It's better than foolishly trusting people without knowing the situation. If you don't know the situation, you will be foolish and trust people. Isn't this Hu Hao? Li Hechuan went to look at Uncle Ji next to him and found that he didn't seem to have any meaningful meaning. He must have misunderstood. Zheng Qianqian over there was just crawling forward, twisting and lying in front of the car before breathing a sigh of relief. She quietly got up under the cover of the car and shouted to Hu Hao inside, Hu Hao, Hu Hao. Hu Hao was still a little sleepy and was thinking about taking a nap. His wound hurt so much before that he would wake up from the pain no matter how much he slept. Just now Ji Chang's gave him anesthesia, and now he can't feel the wound at all. This sleepiness makes him feel sleepy. Come up. Qianqian? Why did you come here? Aren't you supposed to come back from that way? Seeing Zheng Qianqian, Hu Hao's face lit up with joy. Zheng Qianqian carefully looked in the direction of the RV, which was almost covered with vines, opened the door and slowly got in. What's going on? Who are those people? Qianqian, let me tell you, what a coincidence. Senior Ji also walked this road and happened to bump into us. He realized it was me and heard about us, so he specially brought gas, food, and drinks. Give us. Zheng Qianqian. You mean Ji Chang's? Hu Hao, yes, even a senior, he is too kind, and he is willing to help in this situation. Zheng Qianqian. Ji Chang's, is a nice person? She didn't forget that this guy obviously had a wife and children at home, and he still pretended to be having an affair with her. Although he pretended to be warm-hearted on the outside, he was so enthusiastic because he wanted to help her, but why didn't he criticize other people's warm-heartedness and use his good intentions towards her alone? The most speechless thing was that because he didn't tell her, she couldn't refuse, so she could only tell her that she liked Hu Hao every time, but this guy was so shameless that he just pretended that he didn't. Hearing this, he even made a face towards Hu Hao. Hu Hao was so stupid that he couldn't see anything. Anyway, Zheng Qianqian had no good impression of Ji Chang's, and even disliked him very much. It's understandable that she can't control herself if she likes this kind of thing, but it would be disgusting to like someone else when she has a wife and children at home. After hearing Hu Hao's words, her first reaction was whether Ji Chang's had poisoned the food. Hu Hao was still praising Ji Chang's for having so many good people, but Zheng Qianqian didn't believe a word of it. Good people all have a sense of morality. Would a person with a sense of morality have an affair while he has a wife and children? Hu Hao kept talking, but Zheng Qianqian didn't answer a word. She listened patiently until he finished and said, I found a gas station. Since he gave us these things, we can't ask for them in vain. This contributing the news from the gas station to him is a return of the favor. Did you tell him I was there too? Hu Hao nodded. As I said, the senior just heard that we are weak and disabled, and only the disabled can help us. Zheng Qianqian. It seemed like she couldn't hide anymore. Forget it, since Hu Hao said that Ji Chang's wife and children were in the car, he would probably restrain himself even if he had some ideas. Hu Hao couldn't move, so she had to negotiate. Anyway, be careful and ask about the people around Ji Chang's and what they think of Ji Chang's. If this guy gets into trouble, if the people in the same team with him still have a sense of morality, she can still get some help. Zheng Qianqian went. Ji Chang's and Li Hechuan were standing sentry on the roof of the car. She greeted others first, and then asked them calmly what they thought of Ji Chang's. Li's father and Li's mother, Nagaze is great. Kawakawa is not very good at fighting, but he is still willing to take us with him. He is also very caring about us along the way. Kawakawa says he is better than an agent. Fu Hao said loudly, Brother Ji is so awesome, he can do everything, and he is very kind. It was uncomfortable for us to sleep in the car, but the adults could bear it, but the children suffered, so he let our son sleep in the RV with him. Give him any snacks. Guojun, yeah, Nagasawa is very reliable. I thought he didn't care about his family before. But at the critical moment, he took good care of me and Xiaobao. I can also drive, but he felt that driving was too hard and he would always do it by himself. I spent the whole day alone. He and I were separated a few days ago when the meteorite rain fell. I was alone with Xiaobao outside. I don't know how hard it was. Only when he came to find us did I feel at ease. Guo Junyuan still remembered that she had previously misunderstood that Ji Chang's liked Zheng Qianqian, and when she said it, she deliberately talked more about how Ji Chang's was responsible for her and how he took care of their mother and son. It's not that Zheng Qianqian or Ji Chang's would have any ideas, it's just that they instinctively want to distance themselves from each other. Zheng Qianqian, who wished she could be thousands of miles away from Ji Chang's. What's the situation? Why do these people think Ji Chang's is good? Don't they think Ji Chang's has a bad character? Didn't she find out before that he was messing around with women after his career stabilized? No matter at home, he was surrounded by fair weather friends. She looked at Chen Lu, who had never come over. Love rivals all thought Ji Chang's was a nice person. Chen Lu, who had always insisted that he was right, was hit hard this time. Even looking at the sheep's butt pointed at him was no longer as unbearable as before. He felt so numb. What's wrong with this world? Why can't everyone have the eyes to see the truth like him? He sat in his car and watched the girl named Zheng Qianqian chatting with everyone from a distance, looking very happy. Chen Lu knew about Zheng Qianqian, wasn't she the one Ji Chang's wanted to pursue before? They are all kinds of attentive and considerate, chasing people wherever they go, and buying a lot of things to give to others. Ji Chang's was so kind to her. Needless to say, she must also think that Ji Chang's was a nice person. After all his love rivals have fallen, let alone the person Ji Chang's tried so hard to please. Numb, so numb. Fu Hao happened to call Chen Lu, Brother Chen, are you going to have a barbecue tonight? Chuan shot a rabbit. We plan to have a roasted whole rabbit tonight. Chen Dai Lu, eat, I have seasonings here and I will bring them to you later. After all, he couldn't hold back the impulse in his heart. He glanced at Zheng Qianqian and the others and asked, what did you say to that girl? They all smiled so much that their faces bloomed. Oh, you mean Qianqian? Didn't she belong to the same club as Brother Ji before? We were just discussing how good a person Brother Ji is. Chen Dalu, tisk. Really? Not long after Fu Hao left, Zheng Qianqian came. The two of them greeted and exchanged names first, and then talked about other things for a while. Feeling that the time was almost up, Zheng Qianqian asked, by the way, Brother Chen, do you have a good relationship with Senior Ji? Senior, he. Chen Lu rolled his eyes in his heart, yes, your senior is very kind and loyal. There is no one as good as him in the world. Are you satisfied? Are you happy? Did you get the answer you wanted? You bunch of scumbags. Chuizaza is a term created by Chen Lu himself. By extension, it means the big scumbag who blows Ji Changs without any brain. A bunch of stupid people who can't see the truth. Even if you can't see clearly, you still want to brag in front of him, the only wise man. Phew, spicy chicken. Chen Lu's mood at the moment was 1/3 sadness and anger, 1/3 frustration, 1/3 despair, and 1/3 resignation. He felt like he was a palette now, complex and full of colors. And Zheng Qianqian, who heard Chen Lu's answer. It turns out that everyone really says Ji Chang's is good. Even his wife thinks so. What's wrong with this world? Could it be that no one could see Ji Chang's true face? If everyone thought Ji Chang's was a nice person but she was the only one who didn't think so, then she might have to think carefully about whether she had misunderstood something. Otherwise, it's impossible for everyone to be blind. Zheng Qianqian left. Chen Lu, who was sitting in the car, would never know that he missed the only person who was not blind. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Tang Zhonmao. Chapter 94. Zheng Qianqian's route was different from the route Ji Chang's planned to take. But after seeing the route they planned to take under Hu Hao's enthusiasm and Zheng Qianqian's vigilance, Ji Chang's directly told them that they would still turn back to the city if they went this way. Moreover, the surviving humans are looking for resources everywhere. If they turn back, they will face the tragic situation of not being able to find resources. Zheng Qianqian didn't believe it. She had studied this map so many times. It was clearly the way out of the city. How could it be possible to turn back into the city? Li Hechuan took out a drone, flew it into the sky to record the video, and then recorded the winding route. Zheng Qianqian. She never expected such an operation. Isn't there no internet now? How can you still use this? Ji Chang's pointed at Li Hechuan. Chuan is pretty good at this. Li Hechuan stood proudly. This drone is part of my collection. I ask someone to buy it for me at a high price. I usually let it fly around and take photos and videos. I can sit at home without any shortage of material. And this kind of debugging is not difficult. There are many components here, Brother Ji, and everything is available. I am planning to try to see if I can make another one myself. The one I made may not be as useful as the one we are using, but it is still okay. Zheng Qianqian. She had previously speculated that this fat, white, and unattractive man might be used as a decoy in the team, but she didn't expect him to be so naughty. Sure enough, masters are always among the humble. She was even more sure that she was right. Before, Li's father and Li's mother said that Ji Chang's was kind enough to take them with him, but now it seems that Ji Chang's clearly took a fancy to Li Hechuan's talent. She said that she would not make a mistake in inferring that Ji Chang's would not do it early because there was no benefit. He must have recruited Li Hechuan to take care of Li's father and mother because of Li Hechuan's talent of being able to make his own drone. Just as he was thinking this, Li Hechuan turned to look at Ji Chang's. Uncle Ji, take me with you when you go to watch on the roof of the car later. Please point me out if I did something wrong. Ji Chang's was making sauce to prepare for roasting whole rabbit later. When he heard his words, he immediately agreed, okay, but be careful when you start, don't waste materials like last time. Now these things it's not easy to find. Zheng Qianqian, Senior gave you some advice? Aren't you a professional? No, Senior is not a professional either. Yes, Uncle Ji has a tribe. Isn't it normal for him to know these skills? Li Hechuan answered quite confidently. Zheng Qianqian. Normal, normal. Aren't the wealthy people all about buying and training themselves? When will it be possible to make drones with standard equipment? But in this case, the reason why Ji Chang's recruited Li Hechuan because of his ability seemed to make no sense. Zheng Qianqian looked at Ji Chang's, who was standing at the table making sauce, a little confused. This table is foldable. It usually takes up a little space when folded, but when it is extended, it becomes very large. There is also a barbecue grill next to it. At this moment, the rabbit has been cleaned up and placed on it, and next to it Fu Hao looked at the heat and gave it a spin. As for Ji Chang's, he was wearing a white apron, his hands were washed clean, he had just chopped some millet, pepper, onions, ginger, and garlic, and was now preparing the sauce in a decent manner. Even if he was doing kitchen work, he was very polite. They looked orderly, and if it weren't for the fact that the grass where they were parked was flattened, and the other areas were surrounded by grass that was taller than a person, it would have looked like they were on an outing in the wild. It seemed that the mixture was ready. He took out a small plate with a nice shape. Why do you need to bring a small plate specially for holding sauce when you are on the run? After filling it, he handed it to Guo Junyuan next to him with a gentle voice. Can you try adjusting it to this flavor? Next to Guo Junyuan's feet was a folding stroller, which was unfolded at the moment. Xiaobao was sitting in it, looking around curiously. She took the small plate, dipped a little in her chopsticks and put it in her mouth. Yeah, it's delicious and fragrant. Then don't add anything else. After receiving his wife's approval, Ji Chang's beautiful face that had not been damaged even in the apocalypse showed a faint smile, and he took a spoon and filled the small plates one by one with sauce. Then he poured another bowl of something that looked very similar to Worcestershire sauce. He took a special barbecue brush and started to brush the whole body of the rabbit. Guo Junyuan suddenly thought, by the way, are there some frozen fish in the refrigerator in our car? Let's eat them together this time. With that said, she went back to open the car refrigerator and took out some fish inside. This was caught by Ji Chang's when they passed by the river 5 days ago. At that time, they cooked boiled fish and ate 3 of them, but there were 4 left. Guo Junyuan put it in the refrigerator to freeze. Everyone has been eating it these days. The meal in the car wasn't too sumptuous, so she didn't think about it. Zheng Qianqian was already very surprised when she heard there were fish, but then she saw Guo Junyuan actually took a few fish out of the car. She was completely confused. This doesn't look like a picnic. This is a picnic at all. In the past 10 days, she and Hu Hao had driven to so many places together and met many other humans, but none of them were as relaxed and comfortable as they were. Take a look at the barbecue items. They all look pretty good, including barbecue racks, oil brushes, and as Guo Junyuan just said, they actually have a refrigerator. Even though I came here with the intention of sneaking into the enemy, now I see everyone gathering together and enjoying themselves. Children are running around eating grilled chicken wings in their hands, and adults are gathering together and even posing. A table of mahjong came out and were beckoning them to come over and play. But Ji Chang still made the sauce, took off his apron, hugged Xiaobao, and started coaxing him. Next to him, Guo Junyuan stuffed a fat chicken leg into his hand. He was holding the drumstick in one hand and a glass of temperature in the other hand. With fresh milk, he looked at the father and son with a gentle smile. This scene made Zheng Qianqian's nose feel a little sore. Of course, she was not jealous or envious, but she suddenly felt as if she had returned to a time before the disaster happened. At that time, the road had not turned into a prairie, and she did not have to worry about whether an antelope would jump out of nowhere when she went to the toilet. When driving, you only need to look at the surrounding vehicles and traffic lights, and you don't have to worry about whether you will get stuck in the swamp while driving. Who knows why the place that was supposed to be a road turned into a swamp? But considering that this place has become a prairie, it is understandable that there is an extra swamp on the road. Because of this feeling of the once happy and peaceful life, Zheng Qianqian liked Ji Chang's more than anything. In addition, it was just a chance encounter, the route was different, and everyone around Ji Chang's unanimously said that Ji Chang's was indeed a good person. Zheng Qianqian began to wonder if he was really neurotic. The most important thing is that she believed in her intuition before. But now facing Ji Chang's, she couldn't feel the "I'm a bad guy haha" signal from this man at all. Instead, she only had calmness and gentleness, just like she thought he was pretending to be before. And when Ji Chang's looked at her and met her eyes, there was no unnecessary emotion in his eyes. It's not like he likes her or has any thoughts about her. Zheng Qianqian fell into deep thought. Could it be that she really made a mistake? Her intuition was no longer accurate, so she could no longer rely solely on her intuition as before, but also relied on the judgment of those around her. However, everyone around her felt that Ji Chang's was a good person. Even Li Hechuan broke the news that his relationship with Ji Chang's was not very harmonious, and it was said that Chen Lu was his enemy since childhood. Even his sworn enemies think Ji Chang's is a good person, so how good must he be? Zheng Qianqian gradually began to doubt herself. When she ate delicious barbecue, her doubts were overshadowed by the delicious taste. She saw the essence through the phenomenon. No matter who Ji Chang's is, since their paths are completely different, they will definitely have no intersection in this world in the future, so why does she still have to worry about this? It doesn't matter what kind of person Ji Chang's is, as long as the things he does are done by kind-hearted people. If it were anyone else, it would just be a relationship between a senior and a junior. Who would be willing to give him food and drink, even the most precious gasoline, in such a situation? After thinking about it, Zheng Qianqian felt refreshed. She stopped worrying and thinking, and happily joined the barbecue. When Ji Chang's thoughtfully asked her to take some back for Hu Hao to eat, he readily agreed. Chen Lu was sitting on a small bench and was taking out the seasonings he had brought with him from a woven bag. He had found them when he was looking for food and had been hiding them. He didn't hunt the rabbits, nor did he hunt the pheasants. The fish has nothing to do with him, and he is not embarrassed to eat and drink for free. If Ji Chang saw him eating and drinking for free, he would definitely laugh at him. Even if he doesn't show it on his face, he will definitely laugh at him deep down. No need to ask how he knew, he was so aware of Ji Chang's psychological activities. As he was taking out the seasonings one by one, he saw Zheng Qianqian smiling at Ji Chang's and saying thank you. Peaceful and harmonious. Really? Chen Lu snorted coldly in his heart. He knew that Zheng Qianqian must have been brainwashed as well. Maybe you still feel how tall and majestic Ji Chang's image is, naive. Chen Lu, who took out all the condiments he had collected, had no idea that Zheng Qianqian turned against him because of him. After pouring the seasoning, he only noticed that Li Hechuan was brushing the rabbit meat, stood up and walked over there. You've never barbecued before, have you? You can't do this like this. Come on, let me teach you. Li Hechuan was shocked that Chen Lu, who looked even more useless than him and only talked about how to tease Uncle Ji, actually looked like he was very proficient in cooking. He quickly gave up the position of chef and even gave him Ji Chang's apron. Chen Lu started to barbecue like this. He even asked Li Hechuan to take out the induction cooker in the RV and cook it himself. As a result, the scene looked more enjoyable. Zheng Qianqian looked at the scene and became more sure of her thoughts. He can get along so well with his sworn enemy. Maybe she really was mistaken. Ji Chang seems really friendly. Fortunately, Chen Lu didn't know that it was him who made Zheng Qianqian have such an idea, otherwise he would definitely go crazy. Zheng Qianqian ate by herself and gave it to Hu Hao. She was very busy. When everyone was full and started to move things back, she thought for a few seconds and decided to share the information with Ji Chang's and the others. The news from the station was told to them. It's just that this is very different from previous ideas. Before, I thought I couldn't owe a favor, but this time I proposed it out of gratitude. Ji Chang's and the others do need to replenish their gasoline. After all, I drove 3 cars and used a lot of gasoline. Although I had reserves and looked for gas stations according to the map to refill along the way, I only had less than half of the gasoline left after driving for such a period of time. Just like filling up the blue strips, several cars drove to the gas station together. Everyone first filled up the gas together, and then filled it with barrels. After confirming that nothing was missing, Zheng Qianqian and the others followed the new route drawn with Li Hechuan's help. Open, Ji Chang's and the others continue to drive home. The two parties are now separated. Although Zheng Qianqian had begun to suspect that her intuition was wrong, she never let down her guard. What reassured her was that Ji Chang's never made an attack until they were the only car left on the road again. She breathed a sigh of relief. Sure enough, is she overthinking it? But Lu, who was sitting in his car and driving, staring at the grazing sheep in front of him, completely forgot about the name Zheng Qianqian. Replaced with stupid human number 6 who was also deceived by Ji Chang's mask, there is no sense of violation at all. Everyone continued to drive forward, because there was a refrigerator, and there were also prey that would die under bows and arrows along the way. There was no need to worry about eating and drinking, and they would also play recreational activities together, such as hunting puke and hitting mahjong, or practice archery while sitting on the roof of an RV. Because the plant that Ji Chang's took as the arrow flower has grown up, they have no shortage of arrows to use. They don't have to feel bad if they don't pick them up after shooting them. Of course, since Ji Chang's discovered that there is a kind of vine that can be twisted into silk and can be braided into ropes, there are more people. The same activity is to rub the rope. The rope can be tied to the arrow. When practicing archery, tie the rope to the end and pull the arrow back with the prey. They have no shortage of arrows now, but it would be nice to save a few. We also encountered other cars along the way, but those cars just ran away when they saw them from a distance. Ji Chang's and Guo Junyuan analyzed that the relationship between human beings and humans must not have been good, otherwise those people would not run away as soon as they saw them. Either these people have encountered bad people before and were dealt with, or these people themselves are bad people. Look, they had 4 vehicles, plus a tricycle, and the RV was so tall, so they thought they were too crowded, so they ran away. Anyway, since they had Li Hechuan and a radio, they didn't need to ask other humans for information. From then on, they began to avoid other humans. Finally, they drove to the foot of a mountain. The car stopped, and Li Hechuan came out with the drone and let it fly. He controlled it while watching the video. Yes, this is it. Chen's Lu calmed down a little because of the excitement of returning home. Here? How can there be such a high mountain in our village? He looked at the video screen. Chuan, are you looking in the wrong place? There are forests near our village, and there are mountains, but they are all small hills, not so high. Ji Chang's looked up at the mountain in front of him and suddenly said, yes, there is a high mountain near our village. Erlang Mountain? Erlang Mountain is not bald. The rest of Chen Lu's words were stuck in his throat. He looked steadily at the mountain in front of him. About 10 meters away, there was a huge dent. The saying passed down in the village is that these are the footprints of Erlang Shen. Although the legend does not mention why Erlang Shen's footprints are so big, no one has asked similar questions about whether the one with the big footprints should be Bigfoot. A mountain that had been bald since they were young is now covered with green trees, which look so lush and green. The world has really changed. Uncle Ji, does your village look like an eye when viewed from the air? Ji Chang's, yes. Li Hechuan had a complicated expression on his face and moved away from watching the video. The terrain of this village is a bit complicated now. You can see for yourselves. Ji Chang's and Chen Lu looked closer. Li Hechuan pointed to the left side of the village. There are several mountains here, and there are basically no roads for people to walk on. Just now, the drone recorded a video of wild boars, and they were not just 1 or 2, but a group of them. He pointed to the right. This is a river. There are many water snakes in the river. I can't tell whether they are poisonous or not. Anyway, they are very permeable. There's not much else in front of the village, but there are very tall trees there. I asked the drone to take a closer look. Almost every tree has honeycombs on it. I checked the information before and found that there will be honeycombs here in summer. The beekeepers came to stay for a period of time. These bees may have been left behind at that time. Then the meteorite rain came and there was much more nectar than before. The bees may have also been affected by nature and multiplied and expanded their populations. In other words, this area already occupied by bees. They have discussed this before. After the end of the world, it seems that only humans have not changed in the entire world, while other animals and plants have evolved to a greater or lesser extent. Plants are growing rapidly, and animals have higher IQs than before. What they have in common is that they grow according to the characteristics that they had before the end of the world. For example, rabbits are the most common thing nowadays because they were very good at reproducing before the apocalypse. After the apocalypse, their ability to reproduce seems to have been further strengthened. Bees are also animals that can expand their populations. Li Hechuan continued, "This is not the worst. The worst thing is that the road below, which is the road we must cross if we want to enter the village, cuts off all the farmland. The fields in your village should be behind this road, the villagers must take this road if they need food, but there are lions living on this road." Chen Lu's shocked voice reached a high pitch, "A pride of lions. How could we have such a thing here? Li Hechuan, I found out that your county has a zoo, so." Chen Dailu. Grass. Li Hechuan added, "Do you know what this terrain means?" Chen Lu sounded frustrated, "You think we have to fight these lions falling from the sky if we want to go home?" "No." Ji Chang's eyes were fixed on the video. "This means that the people in the village cannot go out. They can only stay in the village, but the food they grow is all outside. Does that mean you have no choice but to go hungry?" Chen Lu suddenly looked ashen. His father, his mother, they are all edible. It's over, they must be living a very miserable life now. He thought of many adjectives in an instant. He has a sallow face and thin muscles, a big head and a small body, and is as skinny as a stick. His face is sallow and he lives in despair. No. Ji Chang's was not as devastated as Chen's Lu. He remembered that everyone in the village had granaries, and everyone usually saved enough food for half a year, so the villagers might be anxious or worried about what they would do if they ran out of food in the future. "But I'm not really hungry. Okay, let's make a plan to see how we can defeat these lions and enter the village." In a village surrounded by danger, there is a pair of neighbors who are yelling at each other across the wall. "My son's grades are better than your son's, his brain is smarter than your son's, and his appearance is better than your son's. I must be the one who comes back first. Fart, what's the use of your son's good looks? My Lulu is smart and likes to play basketball. Didn't you listen to what the village chief said? This is called the end of the world. Good grades are of no use at the end of the world. It depends on whether he can play." "Definitely. It's my Lulu who's coming back first. You're the one who farted. Your Chen Lu is as skinny as a bamboo pole. I, Nagasawa, can knock him over with just one slap. My Lulu can still push him to death." The two of them couldn't see each other's faces, but they were still quarreling fiercely. Their husbands almost immediately started calling, "Stop quarreling, let's eat when the food is ready." They are all quite helpless, because it seems that poisonous snakes have entered the village recently, and no one dares to go out. The two women were so busy that they exchanged various insults across the wall, chattering louder than the magpies in the tree. "Mother Ji, wait for me over there. I'll teach you a lesson after dinner." "Mother Chen, just wait, it's not certain who will teach whom. My parents, Zi, are coming back to help me scold you together. My family, Lulu, and your family, Ji Chang's, have come back early. I think it was our mother-in-law who scolded you first. Duet. Everyone knows I'm a good man." Author, Tang Zhonmao. Chapter 95. The two mothers in the village put down their bowls and chopsticks and continued to return to the wall to curse in the distance. Outside, Ji Changs and Chen Lu, who appeared frequently in their mouths, were hiding in the grass and looking over there. A pride of lions resting. The surrounding areas of the village are so dangerous. Chen Lu is extremely anxious when he thinks about how much suffering and fear his parents will suffer at home. At this moment, he doesn't care about his self-requirement of keeping a safe distance of more than 2 meters from his mortal enemy, and Ji Changs crawled in the grass and looked at the lion opposite. 6, 7, 11, what to do? There are 11 lions. How can we defeat so many lions? Even if we have bows and arrows, we don't have as many lions as us. How can we defeat them? Chen Lu was extremely anxious, but couldn't think of a solution. It would be okay if they were fighting in high-rise buildings, but they couldn't even build a slightly taller building here. The tallest thing at the moment was their RV. Ji Changs looked at the lions with a telescope. There are no cubs in the pride, only one male lion, and the rest are female lions. This is quite normal. The lion group has always had a polygamous system. But now, the male lion with the largest head and the most majestic and beautiful sideburns is lying under the tree, swaying his tail and closing his eyes. Sleep. They don't have cubs and the lioness isn't pregnant. Chen Lu, it's already this time, can you stop focusing on being so strange? Isn't the most important thing for them now to go home or defeat the lion? Why should we pay attention to something as trivial as whether a lion is pregnant or not? Ji Changs, 7 of these female lions are lactating, but they have no children in their bellies, and there are no lion cubs with them. And among the 10 female lions, only 7 of them are farthest from the male lion. Zhang Shengsheng also moved over quietly. Hearing Ji Chang's words, he seemed to understand. Basically all mammal mothers will take good care of their children. It is impossible for these female lions to leave their cubs alone. Are all their children dead? Is it possible that all the lion cubs died during the meteor shower? Ji Changs shook his head. Meteor showers are random. Although the zoo regularly places lion cubs together, they usually live with their mothers. If something happens to the lion cubs, their mother is unlikely to survive. He crawled and turned back, returned to the car, and asked Li Hechuan, who was making inquiries, "How are you? Have you found out the origins of these lions?" "I found out that there is a zoo in the county. It was sponsored by a large group. It is not short of money. It uses an exhibition model that simulates nature. These lions should be from those zoos. They are from the zoo. There are 2 groups of lions, one is the group of lions led by Dalin Lion, and the other is the group of lions led by Dawang Lion." Ji Changs, then which group of lions are we meeting? Li Hechuan, it's a bit hard to tell. I think they all look the same. The female lions don't seem to be much different. As for the male lions, the king has a tuft of yellow hair here, but Dalin doesn't. Ji Changs leaned over and took a closer look. Then he pointed to a female lion on the screen. This female lion belongs to the king's pride, but the lion we saw just now is Dalin. That makes sense. Chen Dailu came out of the grass crawling and twisting. As soon as he stood up, he heard Ji Changs say, "Male lions will seize territory, drive away the original male lions, and take over the female lions from the original group of lions. In most cases, the male lions will occupy the territory. No lion can accept the child left by the previous lion king, and if it wants to have a child with a female lion, the female lion must be in estrus. Killing the child will cause the female lion to be stimulated into estrus. At this time, the male lion will the lion then mates with the lioness." Guo Junyuan had just finished coaxing Xiaobao to sleep, and when she heard these words, her face showed a trace of unbearability. So all the children of the lioness were bitten to death. Right. Ji Changs guessed, it should be because of the meteorite rain at that time that something unexpected happened to the lion group occupied by this male lion named Dalin, because the female lions that were following him just now were all from the group of king lions, so in it after the lioness and cubs were gone, they attacked the king. They might have killed it, or they might have driven it away, but no matter which way it was, the king would definitely not survive. At this time, an injured male the lion would never live for more than a few days, so Dalan took over his lion group, killed all the lion cubs that were not of his own blood, and forced the female lion to go into heat so that he could have his own offspring. Chen Lu's face twitched when he heard this. He substituted himself, which seemed to mean that he was married and had children, and was living a happy life. Suddenly Ji Chang's came over, killed him, killed his children, and forced his wife to have children with Ji Chang's. How shameless! He was filled with righteous indignation. This kind of lion is simply the scum of a lion among lions. Having said this, he sighed again. Although he did not have a wife, he truly felt the pain of having his wife taken away from him. How uncomfortable it must be for those lionesses, seeing their husbands and children die with their own eyes. Ji Chang's, actually, they only feel uncomfortable for their little lions. In a group of lions, female lions generally have no feelings for male lions. For them, male lions are just a person who protects the group and allows them to have babies. Tool of Chen Dailu. Ji Chang's, those female lions were injured. They should have joined the battle when the two male lions were fighting, but they all lost. Either the king himself was not strong enough, or the king himself was injured, so in the end Dalan took over. Chen Lu, who quickly took back his true feelings, became a little impatient. This is not watching TV. What's the use of giving us science about the animal world? Even if they are a love triangle or a love triangle, they have something to do with us. Ji Chang's, it really does. Chen Dailu. Ji Chang's, in the animal world, everyone is very cruel. Usually when two male lions fight, the female lions will not interfere. If their husband wins, they will happily come forward to reward them. If the other party wins, they will. If you change your husband, even if it is a female lion with a child, the most she can do is hide the cub to avoid the death of her child if the lion group changes owners. These are natural laws and are engraved in instinct. Since these female lions have, maybe they helped their original husband. Is it possible that they got rid of this animal instinct temporarily? Guo Junyuan seemed to understand. You mean the meteorite rain has improved the IQ of these lions? Yes, we could tell this when we caught other prey before. These prey are more or less smarter than before. They will become smarter, why not the lion? Ji Chang's quickly made a decision. Lions do have hatred, but the average female lion will suppress this hatred after becoming pregnant again and take care of the new lion cubs wholeheartedly. But if their thinking evolves, maybe they still hate the male lions, but the male lions are much stronger than them, so the female lions don't dare to take action. He climbed into the RV in twos and looked at the lying lion with his binoculars. I have to get closer to them and attack the male lion first. They didn't dare to shoot arrows before. On the one hand, there was no cover here. There were only a few of them. Even if they were men, women, young and old, everyone could only knock down a few of them even if they shot arrows together. The reaction ability of lions is much faster than human imagination. Ji Chang's is relatively unlucky, and his method is to make these lions' den full of trouble. He refused the company of others and climbed up a tree with his bow and arrow. Because the anesthetic had not been tested on such a super large creature, he did not dilute it again this time, but directly applied it on the arrow, and then aimed it at the male lion sleeping under the tree. Everyone in the RV held their breath nervously and looked here. Chen Dailu and Li Hechuan and Guo Junyuan were each holding a telescope. Whoosh! The arrow flew smoothly to the lion's butt. It was awakened from its sleep, jumped up angrily, and roared angrily. The surrounding female lions were startled by its sudden movement, and they all stood up in confusion, swung their tails and looked over curiously. Blood flowed from the male lion's buttocks, and the female lions suddenly became restless. They are all born hunters and are very familiar with the smell of blood. At first, everyone was fine, but suddenly the Lion King was injured. They didn't understand what happened, and gradually became anxious with the atmosphere. Unlike these anxious female lions, the female lions who were far away from the lions all stood up one after another, wagging their tails and sniffing the smell of blood belonging to male lions in the air. Their cold eyes looked at the male lion in front of them who had killed their child. It was trying hard to stand up, but the effect of the anesthetic made it wobbly even when it stood up, unable to stand firmly at all. The female lions who had lost their children keenly felt the weakness coming from this domineering and fierce male lion. They licked their lips and walked towards the side with vigilant steps. There was a burst of chickens and dogs jumping and blood and flesh. Chen's Lu frowned, trying hard not to take his eyes away from the lion he was fighting. The fighting power of a male lion is stronger than that of a female lion, but who let him be tricked by Ji Chang's? The effect of the anesthetic is still on the body. Even if its body is big enough and does not fall down all of a sudden, its teeth are still as sharp as its claws. He is so powerful and unconscious, how can he beat the combined lioness? The other childless lionesses were confused. They looked at each other, wondering whether they should step forward to help their husband. Because the scene that happened in front of them had never happened before, and the male lions did not let them help, they were blinded. The female lions without children could only look at the scene in confusion, and thought hesitantly. Approaching but not daring to approach. In the end, the lionesses won. The male lion was seriously injured and staggered away, but the lionesses did not pursue him. It will definitely not survive. If the male lion is injured in the zoo, it can still receive proper care. Under such circumstances, the injured male lion cannot even catch a rabbit, cannot replenish food, and the wound is if you can't handle it, it will die somewhere before long. The lioness, who had beaten the male lion the most and was the most ruthless, stood where the male lion was originally and let out a roar. The other lionesses were even more confused. Usually it's a battle between lions, and the winner calls out like this, which means I won, this land belongs to me, and you lions also belong to me. It's a female lion. What's her name? But the other female lions who were still in the lactation period came forward obediently and tried their best to help the female lion lick its blood-stained hair to express their submission. The female lion looked at the other lions who had been in a state of confusion. She leaned down slightly, grinned her blood-stained mouth, exposed her fangs, and let out a threatening roar from her throat. Those female lions. They took a few steps back in fear and saw the queen in front of them walking towards them. Although they still couldn't figure out the situation, they finally surrendered, making soft noises to express their favor, and cautiously stepped forward to lick the queen's hair. In this way, when the planet changed, the first lions ruled by a queen appeared on the planet. At this time, the lion group was already at a disadvantage. The female lions involved in the battle were all injured, and they were no longer protected by the male lions. If Ji Chang's took action now, he would win 80% of the time. But he suddenly changed his mind. He drew his bow, pointed it in the direction of the queen, and then moved it slightly away. Whoosh! The arrow was stuck in the ground, frightening the queen who had just calmed down to jump back. This time, it looked at Ji Chang's location very accurately. But it is much smarter than other lions in the group. It clearly remembers that the male lion lost its fighting ability just because of this strange thing, and the human actually had another one in his hand. The queen thinks a little more than other lions. It witnessed with its own eyes how the previous king lost, and naturally it would not repeat the same mistake. It quickly made a decision, leaned down and barked a few low sounds at the female lions around it. The lions followed it and left together. They will choose a place suitable for lions to live and raise their own cubs. The female lions will stay and the male lions will be driven away when they can survive independently. In the past, male lions killed their cubs in order to compete for territory with lionesses. This time, it will expand the group and develop stably. When it encounters other lions, it will defeat the male lion and force it to leave blood in its belly. Powerful offspring can make their group bigger and bigger. But the group led by this queen will never attack humans. It will never forget that when it ascended the throne, humans used terrible things to attack the male lions, leaving the invincible male lions without the power to fight back. Of course, this is just a thing for later. The current queen is just a young lioness who fled with her tribe just after ascending the throne. Ji Changs made sure they left before waving in the direction of several cars, indicating that they could drive over. The car drove over quickly, and Guo Junyuan's heart was beating very fast. Although she had just witnessed the whole process with her own eyes and knew that the lions were not even close to her husband, she was still extremely scared. Ji Changs touched the tree, and she rushed over and hugged him tightly. Okay, I'm fine. Let's get ready to enter the village. Ji Changs looked around. Li Hechuan was still the same as before, with a face full of admiration. Fu Hao and the others were also similar. Chen's Lu. After realizing that Ji Changs was looking at him, he quickly looked away and hid behind Fu Hao. Chen's Lu always quarreled with Ji Changs whenever he could find an opportunity, but today he didn't dare to antagonize him. Look at the consequences of going against Ji Changs. That male lion was running a harem well, but he was targeted by Ji Changs, and his actions were as fierce as a tiger's. He was bitten by his harem and was forcibly kicked out of the clan. Chen Lu felt that he was not as resistant to being beaten as the lion. Ji Changs is an old yinbai. He had better say less before returning to the village, lest Ji Changs get upset with him and suddenly slander him. Seeing that his parents are in front of him, he doesn't want to go to heaven to play drift. Because of this idea, Chen Lu was as quiet as a chicken on the way into the village, not making any sound. Fu Hao was in the same car with him. Seeing that he didn't speak, he thought he was timid about being close to home. Thinking about how Chen Lu was so worried when he heard that there were dangers on all sides in the village, he also felt that he was worried. I can understand him very well. His parents are no longer here. If they were here, knowing that they were trapped in one place and might be hungry, I don't know how anxious he would be. Fu Hao, who was considerate of Chen Lu, offered to drive the car himself. Brother Chen, you can pack your things first. My uncle and aunt may have suffered a lot when they were trapped in the car. Prepare some delicious food and drink, and be filial to them when you get home. Chen Delu was pulled out of his thoughts. Yep. His parents didn't know how much they suffered. When they were crossing the road just now, a snake crawled over in front of them so openly. Although I don't know if they are poisonous or not, these snakes would not dare to run out in broad daylight before the end of the world. Even if they did come out, they would definitely hide and run away when they saw people. Think again about the environment in the village. Chen Lu's heart was filled with sadness, and he just hoped that his parents wouldn't lose too much weight. He and Fu Hao changed places, and he sat in the back and started packing things. He stocked up on instant noodles himself. The most common thing everyone eats these days is instant noodles. After all, instant noodles are faster when you are on the road. However, he has stocked up 10 boxes and now has 5 boxes left, which is definitely enough. There are also these pieces of meat, which he bought from Guo Junyuan in exchange for pheasant drumsticks before he left for the village, thinking that he wanted to give his parents a good supplement. My parents must have not eaten meat for a long time, and he must give them a good supplement. By the way, there's also pickled mustard. Although it doesn't taste very good, it's still better than nothing. This is what he found with great difficulty. There are also these biscuits, they are all compressed biscuits, very filling, and they are also exchanged from Guo Junyuan. As for why he didn't switch with Ji Changs, haha, Ji Changs is the best at pretending. Who knows if he will trick me? Chen Lu was busy here, and Ji Chang's over there was not idle either. I'm hungry. It seems like it's time for dinner, right? I wonder if my parents are cooking. Guo Junyuan looked at Xiaobao, who happened to be sleeping behind her, and said with a smile, it should be ready soon. Mom and Dad will eat later. She was a little worried about her parents and looked towards Dongshan. Ji Chang's patted the back of Guo Junyuan's hand comfortingly, it's okay. We'll go see your parents after we put down our things and have dinner. Guo Junyuan nodded, looking a little more relieved. When the villagers heard the noise of the car, they opened their doors and came out to see in surprise. When the meteorite rain first started, everyone panicked for a while. Then it got dark, the vegetation grew wildly, and so many wild animals came from nowhere. The villagers were worried at first, but later found that although they could not contact the outside world, they couldn't get out, but as long as they hid in the village, the animals wouldn't attack them, and they gradually felt at ease. The most difficult thing is for families whose relatives are out of town. Now they can't get out, and no one from outside can get in. But there is no point in worrying, I can only live day by day without any hope. As a result, a car actually entered the village today. Does that mean they can go outside to collect food? Although there is no shortage of food, everyone is very anxious as they see the food in the granary getting less and less day by day. There is clearly food outside, but they cannot be brought in. Chen's Lula drove out the window and looked at the uncles, aunts, and uncles who had watched him grow up, looking at him with surprised eyes, and she felt deeply moved in her heart. These are the folks, even though we are not related by blood, they have watched him grow up. They must be surprised to see him back now. Hey, he is also very popular. Chen's Lu couldn't help but get emotional and shouted to the elders who came out to see them, Uncle Zhang, Aunt Six, Uncle Wang, Grandma and Grandpa, I miss you so much. Uncle Zhang responded, and then asked, Lulu, you came back from outside, then you? Hearing these words of concern, Chen's nose became sore again. He cut off the topic and said, fortunately, although I came back from outside, I didn't suffer much. I had food and drink, and it was pretty good on the way. Good luck, thank you for your concern. Uncle Zhang. He wanted to ask Chen Lu if the road out of the village could be taken since he had returned from outside. Ji Chang stopped the car, opened the window and shouted to the back, the road into the village can be walked, the lions have moved. The people in the village suddenly became excited and excitedly gathered around Ji Chang's to ask questions. Some of the impatient ones had already gone home to prepare tools for a good harvest. Everyone responded with great enthusiasm to Ji Chang's, who gave useful information. Nagans, are you back too? It's been a hard journey, isn't it? Do you know what's going on outside the village? Why did the lions move? Hey, I took a look before. Those lions are so fierce and their teeth are so long. Come into the village. Were they moved when they were there? By the way, were there others outside? Seeing that no one cares about him, and Ji Chang's is admired by all the stars, Chen Lu. He almost spit out a mouthful of blood. In school, in front of others, everyone treats me differently. Why should I still be like this when I return to the village where I grew up together? He was very angry, but he felt much better when he thought that these villagers were just people who had no blood relationship with him. After all, there is no blood relationship. No matter how much you care, how far can you care? His parents were different. In the days without him, they must have been sleepless at night, unable to eat well, skinny as a stick, talking about him every day. Maybe I will still hold his photo and imagine that he is back. And him. Really back. Seeing him return home unscathed, not only not thinner but also a lot fatter than before, his parents would surely burst into tears with excitement, hugging him with snot and tears, and tell them how much they had in the days without him. I miss him so much, I always dream about him. And at such a critical moment, he would carry his carefully selected chicken legs, pickled vegetables, and biscuits into the house, then hug his parents calmly and tell them that their son was back and they would not suffer any more in the future. He will support this family. Chen's Lu Zheng was caught up in his fantasy and couldn't extricate himself. He heard Ji Chang's in front of him asking, "How are my parents? Are they at home now?" "Your parents? They are at Lulu's house." Chen Dai Lu. Ji Chang's parents are at his home. The first thing that popped into his mind was what the scene would be like every time the two families met. His mother and Ji Chang's mother had never dealt with each other. Every time he saw the two of them together, they would scold each other, and each scolded them harder than the other. He had listened to his mother say at home countless times that he should have directly they took over the Ji family's place and saw what they could do. Ji Chang's parents couldn't have gone to their house to bully others before he, the mainstay, came home. Although his mother is as fat as Ji Chang's mother, Ji Chang's father is a bit taller than his father. Chen Lu's mind was filled with thoughts of his parents being weak, helpless, and pitiful. They were bullied by the dark forces, Ji Chang's parents. He knelt down and cried, crying why his son hadn't come back yet. For a moment, my heart was panicked and my hands were shaking. As soon as I opened the car door, I stopped driving and ran straight towards home. Ji Chang's will definitely help his parents, but now that there are so many villagers blocking the road, cars can't pass at all, so he must take a preemptive strike. You must not let your parents fall behind after you have fallen behind. Behind him, Ji Chang's and Guo Junyuan looked at the back of Chen Lu and Yuki Jueshan, their eyes twitching a little. Guo Junyuan, has he always been like this? Ji Chang's, maybe. I feel like I've become a little stupider recently. He continued to ask the villagers, don't my mother and Chen's mother always get along with each other? Why did they get together? Ji Chang's had never doubted that the two families were fighting. If a fight really broke out, these villagers would not stand by and not stop the fight, let alone talk to them with such a smile and no rush. Hey, there are poisonous snakes in the village. Your mother and Chen's mother were scolding each other across the wall this morning. You know, they like this. Chen's mother went to the latrine. Your mother was waiting for her to come back and continued to scold her, but while she was waiting, she saw a snake crawling into Chen Lu's house, and she quickly ran over and knocked on the door. It took the two families half an hour to catch the snake. Hey, tell me, if this was a poisonous snake, wouldn't Chen Lu's parents be dead? The poisonous snake is at home, who knows when it will bite. Lulu, his mother killed one of his chickens, saying that he wanted to thank you, mother. Ji Chang's nodded and said he understood, my mother is like this, she has always been hard-spoken and soft-hearted. Yes, I said, your whole family is good. Did you come back with Lulu? Why is he running so fast? Doesn't he have a car? Ji Chang's thought for a moment about Chen Lu's expression when he ran away just now. He showed a polite but still joking smile, maybe, I want to give my family a surprise. Over there, Chen Lu simply showed the same level of effort as when he had his body measured. Seizi ran to the front of his house, looked at the door in front of him, and took a deep breath. Chen Lu. The backbone of this family is here to support my parents. Chen Lu took another deep breath and took another deep breath, intending to win first in terms of volume. Inside the house, Mother Chen pushed Ma Jiang, her face lit up with joy, you're crazy. Come on, give me your son's photo. I want to add a beard to him. My Lulu is the one the most polite. At this time, the door was opened from the outside, and a heartbreaking voice suddenly came out. Mom. The four people sitting at the Ma Jiang table were so frightened that they all trembled and looked over with frightened expressions on their faces. As for Chen Lu, he was also confused. The smell of chicken soup was in the air. In the front yard, there was a Ma Jiang table, with 4 people sitting around a table. His father, his mother, Ji Chang's, his mother, Ji Chang's, his father. The 4 of them were obviously taking a nap. There was a stove next to it, with a fire burning underneath and firewood burning. The pot on the top was gurgling chicken soup, with Chen Lu's in his eyes. He could even see a few red dates inside. This wasn't what confused him the most. What made him unbelievable was that his mother was holding a photo in her hand. Is that a photo of Ji Chang's? Right? That's his mother. At this moment, I was sweating profusely from running and was in a state of embarrassment. Standing in this happy courtyard where everyone was playing together and drinking chicken soup, I just felt a sense of sadness. He felt as if he had been betrayed. Dad. Mom. You 2 traitors. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Tang Zhongmao. Chapter 96. Chapter 25. Chen Lu was hit hard. Ji's mother told Ji Chang's about this. She was so happy that she walked with ease. For this lady who had been fighting against Chen's mother for so many years, this day was simply the happiest day. First, she ate the chicken soup made by Chen's mother and took advantage of the Chen family. Then, she witnessed with her own eyes the embarrassing scene of Chen Lu, who was praised by Chen's mother and praised to heaven and earth. While bringing sugar water to her son and daughter-in-law, Ji's mother floated over and her voice was floating upwards. Nagaze, you don't know, the expressions of the Chen family at that time, ha 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 ha, she was just following me in front of me. I said her son was the most polite, but Chen Lu came back at this time. Oh my god, her face was so tanned, her clothes were even buttoned off, and her shoes were still worn because she was running too fast. There's a hole, quack quack quack. After laughing like a duck for a long time, Mother Ji stopped laughing and said happily, you are finally back. Although you came back with Chen Lu, it's good to be back. You can tell Mom what you want to eat. Say, I'll do it for you. Because Chen's Lu made such a fuss, what was supposed to be a very touching meeting between mother and son turned into a scene of Chen's mother gloating over the son next door making such a fuss in front of them. Ji Chang's took a sip of sugar water and saw Ji's mother laughing so hard that she almost had cramps. He helped her sit down, somewhat dumbfounded. Mom, I heard from the villagers that it wasn't you and Chen's Lu Ta. Has Mom reconciled? Why are you still there, laughing at her? What's the point of reconciliation? We haven't gotten along well. Look at when we get better. She invited me to dinner because I saved their whole family's lives? What does this have to do with reconciliation? Ji Chang's, then you still play mahjong with others. Stewing chicken soup takes time, and now that venomous snakes have entered the village, no one in the village dares to run around or go to other people's homes. I am just afraid of meeting venomous snakes when I go out. I haven't swatted for so long. mahjong, I happened to be going to their house to drink chicken soup this time, so I took advantage of the time to make some chicken soup. Ji's mother was very proud when she talked about this. She whispered to Ji Chang's, let me tell you, we played and painted pictures of each other's sons. I painted such a big one on Chen Lu's face. Matchmaker mole, ha 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 ha. Ji Chang's finally understood. Mother Ji and Mother Chen are enemies. It is impossible for these 2 people to talk harmoniously and harmoniously. They position each other as enemies, but it is also impossible for them to watch each other die. After all, they are nothing. A particularly bad person just has some minor conflicts and laughs unceremoniously when the other person encounters something embarrassing. Of course, these 2 people have always acted like they would do nothing until death. The original owner believed it, and so did Chen's Lu. Now that the original owner was replaced by Ji Chang's, he had no other feelings at all when he saw this scene. At most, he thought the two mothers were quite cute. Although the relationship was not good, they would remind each other when necessary. This may be a different kind of friendship. But for Chen Lu, who witnessed the happy scene of the four of them with his own eyes, and whose mother still held a photo of Ji Chang's, his nemesis, while she was outside, it might be a little unacceptable. At least what Ji Chang's heard from Ji's mother was that Chen Lu had been in deep thought since he came back. Although Chen's mother next door has been trying to explain and express surprise and welcome to her son's return home, it seems that this is not enough for Chen's Lu. Ji Chang's did not pay attention to Chen Lu, but began to ask about the situation of Guo Junyuan's family. Junyuan's family. Ji's mother looked a little embarrassed, but she still said, "Some people in our village went to see the lions before they came to our area. They seemed to have a herd of wild boars there, and they would enter the village. At that time, they didn't dare to. It's quite dangerous to go out anyway." Guo Junyuan's face suddenly turned pale. Ji Chang's patted her hand comfortingly, "I will find a way. If the wild boar enters the village, they cannot enter rashly. So how can we first know the situation of Guo Junyuan's parents?" Ji Chang's eyes fell on the box. Drone. Kuajiakan. Father Guo was carefully picking at the wall to see if the wild boars were there, when he suddenly heard a buzzing sound in his ears. He raised his head strangely and saw a drone. "Hey, mother!" Father Guo was so frightened that he immediately dropped his butt and squatted down. "What is this? What the hell? The wild boar has become a sperm, and why is it here?" For Father Guo, the vegetation that grew overnight has become a spirit. The wild boar that has learned to play guerrilla warfare and has grown much larger than before has also become a spirit. The ants that are as big as flies are still adults. Fine. He was just an ordinary farmer with little education and didn't read the news. He squinted and stared at it for a long time. "A plane." Ji Chang's voice came from the drone, "Dad, it's me, Chang's." Father Guo was stunned for 30 seconds. Then he got up and ran into the house. Her mother, come out and see, Nagasawa CG has turned into a plane. Everyone knows I'm a good man." Author, Tang Zhongmao. Chapter 97. The Guo family, Guo's father and Guo's mother stood in the yard looking at the drone in the sky as if they were gods, and then listened to Ji Chang's explanation from the microphone above. It turns out he's not a sperm. After listening to Ji Chang's explanation, Father Guo breathed a sigh of relief. If Chang's turned into a drone, what would their Junyuan do? She didn't even deserve it. Although Guo's mother doesn't pay much attention to these things, she loves watching TV and can follow idol dramas. It's not uncommon to see the male protagonist in the movie flying a private jet to pick up the female protagonist / confess to the female protagonist / take the female protagonist on a trip. Although she had never seen a drone, she felt that she knew a lot more than her husband, so she immediately pretended that she was not the one who was so frightened that she almost fell down after hearing what Guo's father said just now, and she reached out and patted her angrily. "Father Guo. Look at you, you are making such a fuss. Isn't this just a plane? How can you still think about Nagasawa becoming a spirit? Even if Nagasawa really becomes a spirit, he can't turn into a plane. Nagaze, is Junyuan okay? Where is Xiaobao? Are you together?" Ji Chang's gave up his position and let Guo Junyuan talk to them. When he heard his daughter's voice and heard her say that she was safe and sound, the two elders felt relieved. "As long as it's okay, Junyuan, let Chang's protect you. Even if you become a sperm, you are still his wife." Ji Chang's was a little helpless on the other end. Anyway, in the eyes of these two elders, he, Ji Chang's, was very likely to become a spirit in this world. He took over Guo Junyuan's position and did not dwell on the topic. Instead, he went directly to the topic and asked about the wild boars in the village. "Wild boars, it's incredible. I don't know where they came from, So many wild boars with teeth so long and bodies so big. When they see people, they rush up to them and wander around the village for several days. None of us don't dare to go out. As Father Guo spoke, he stretched out his hand and gestured, "What a long tooth! There have never been wild boars here. There was a man in the village who wanted to raise wild boars to make money, but all the piglets he brought back died. I remember him. He also said that we are not suitable for wild boars to live here. It seems that he was deceived. This is not suitable. This is simply perfect." Although Father Guo has a very strong ability to derive topics, Ji Chang still controlled the situation perfectly and finally figured out the matter. On the day of the meteorite rain, everyone in the village was very frightened. They stood at the entrance of the village and saw that a meteorite hit a mountain. They didn't know how it caused a mountain fire. They were very frightened and wanted to call. I found that the phone had no signal at all. I wanted to go out, but I was afraid of being hit by a meteorite. So everyone finally scattered around each house, praying to Buddha and God in the hope that they would protect themselves from being hit. The day after the meteorite rain passed, the vegetation in the village skyrocketed. Everyone was shocked again, and no one dared to go out. On the third day, when they boldly wanted to go out to inquire about the situation, the wild boars had already taken over this area. They would come to their village from time to time, and if they saw someone showing up, they would rush over immediately. Father Guo was still a little scared when he talked about this. Who is not afraid of death? Being trapped in this world, watching the food at home getting less and less day by day and being unable to get out. Ji Chang's comforted them with a few words, saying that they would definitely find a way to drive away the wild boars and rescue the two of them. The drone flew away, and it was still going to explore the surrounding terrain and figure out why the wild boar suddenly appeared in the village. Father Guo and Mother Guo were suddenly in a better mood than before. They were trapped at home before, unable to work in the fields or take a phone call. They couldn't make calls on the phone. The only people they wanted to talk to were their neighbors, but the neighbors didn't have a good relationship with them. I hold it in every day, worried about my daughter and son-in-law, and worried about myself. It's fine now. My daughter and son-in-law are back, and they brought back a plain spirit. Father Guo insists on calling her that. Even if the wild boar couldn't be driven out, they were relieved to know that the two of them and their little grandson were safe and sound. The two of them were in a better mood, and they didn't do anything to deal with it casually during the meal like before. Mother Guo took out the bacon and started cooking while humming a song. While doing it, he said to Father Guo next to him, "If that plane comes again, let's get a plastic bag and tie the prepared bacon on it. Junyuan likes to eat bacon the most." Father Guo was in a good mood and found wood from the woodshed and started making rattles. Although he was a farmer, he learned crafts from his master when he was young. But later, modern crafts invaded the handmade market, and everyone liked to buy plastic. He no longer liked making basins, tables, and chairs by hand, so he put them down and did not continue. However, even though he hasn't done it for a long time, it is quite easy for Mr. Guo to make toys for children. He made all the toys when Guo Junyuan was a child. The couple was busy here, while the neighbor stood on a ladder and popped up from the wall. "Are you planning to have something good for your last meal?" She didn't say this without purpose. The houses in the village here are basically lined up one after another, and Guo's father and their neighbor's neighbor is an old man who has no children and his wife is gone. Yesterday, the old man's neighbor found that the old man died, not from natural causes, but from drinking pesticides. It seemed that it was because life was difficult outside and he didn't have much food at home. He thought he would die sooner or later, so he might as well end it himself. The old man's neighbor told another neighbor about the incident, who then told his neighbor, and finally the news reached the neighbors of Guo's father and Guo's mother. She may not know whether Guo's father and mother's family still have enough food to go to ZISA at this time. She just wants to choke them. Mother Guo glared at her, "You just had your last meal. My daughter and son-in-law came back and said they would take us to their village. We are happy to have something good, okay?" Guo's mother said this to show off. After all, her neighbor had always been proud that she had given birth to 2 sons while the Guo family only had 1 daughter, and he often stabbed her. The Guo family has always been unhappy. The country has said that it is the same whether they have a son or a daughter. They love their daughters and it is none of those people's business. However, the culture in the village is like this. If you don't have a son, it's because you are unlucky. You have worked hard for half your life to raise children for others, and when your daughter gets married, you won't even have anyone to support her in her old age. This is correct, but it is incorrect. Isn't that right? Girls rarely come back to their parents' home after getting married. Now she was feeling proud. Yes, you have 2 sons in your family, so what? My daughter and son-in-law can arrange a plane to pick us up. Can your 2 sons do it? Guo's mother was very proud, but her neighbors couldn't get it at all. She just looked at Guo's mother with a strange look on her face, wondering if the family was trapped in the yard and was stupid. Are you poisoned? There are wild boars everywhere in the village. Is it possible that your daughter and son-in-law can still enter the village even if they come back? Mother Guo was even more proud. I know you don't know, but my son-in-law brought us a plane. You know, planes are so expensive. He specially flew a plane to tell us that he would take us back. She is proud, and she feels that her waist is super strong. Neighbor. Airplane. Airplane. I'm afraid you've become stupid after watching an idle drama. The neighbor once heard from relatives that there is a kind of mushroom that will cause hallucinations after eating it. Now she seriously suspects that Guo's father and mother have eaten this kind of mushroom. She said, "Why do you watch idle dramas at such an old age?" Although she didn't know what an idle drama was, it was her 2 sons who told her about it, but that didn't stop her neighbors from learning from it. I know you don't believe it, that plane is called a drone, it? Mother Guo also wanted to talk in detail about the appearance of the drone and how surprised she was when the drone arrived, and how firmly Nagasawa Junyuan said she would take them out of the village. But the neighbors didn't want to hear it. Who knows if stupidity is contagious? Anything can happen these days. Her 2 sons are still at home, and she doesn't want to die from a neighbor's infection. The neighbor climbed down the ladder and moved the pot he used to cook food away from the wall shared by the 2 families. When I entered the house, I didn't forget to laugh at the family members. The next door was probably Father Guo and Mother Guo, who were bored and starting to fall into fantasy. It's not like I haven't seen their son-in-law before. He looks weak when he looks gentle. He used to be fine in an office. In this world, even a piece of grass can fight. How can he come to pick them up? She let out a disdainful scoff. The next day, Ji Chang's and his group drove directly into the village in a car with torches lit and firecrackers hung on the car, crackling, and everyone holding bows and arrows in their hands. Although these wild boars are big, they are not as fierce as lions and tigers. They have long been accustomed to avoiding humans before the end of the world. Now they are frightened by the sound. As soon as Ji Chang's and his bows and arrows hit their companions will stagger and fall, but they very frightened. They subconsciously ran back to the mountain, but on the other side, Li Hechuan and the others also used firecrackers to drive away the wild boars from Ji Chang's village. The wild boars on both sides were not from the same group, and they were frightened again. They all wanted to run to the opposite side. They were frightened by the collision and started fighting with each other. For a while, it was a bloody mess again. Ji Chang sat on the roof of the RV, put down his bow and arrow and sighed, "It seems that it is quite easy to deal with these beasts. All you need to do is use the same tricks you use to deal with people." After saying that, he looked at Chen Lu next to him. "You think so?" Chen Dai Lu, who has never dealt with anyone except Ji Chang's. He looked at Ji Chang's as if he were looking at a devil. Ji Chang's, why are you looking at me like that? In fact, my mother told me when I came back this time that we are neighbors. We should help each other and be friendly to each other. Don't be like children who dislike each other over such trivial things. Now everyone is a grasshopper in the same boat, fighting in the nest is meaningless. Chen Dailu looked back at the height of the RV and quietly sat in the middle of the car. He would not believe Ji Chang's. Oh, this piece of trash, he must have deliberately said something to pretend to be peaceful, so that he could let his guard down before harming him. Now the wild boars are in a mess. If you fall at this time, you will definitely be trampled by the wild boars. Ji Chang's couldn't fool him. Even if Ji Chang's breaks the rules today, he will never agree to shake hands and make peace. Seeing Chen Lu looking at him with the expression "you trash, don't expect me to give in," Ji Chang's could only use his ultimate move. Okay, I admit it. I put the frog in your drawer in the first grade. It was me who put the paper on your back during recess exercises in the 6th grade. I was also the one nicknamed Wanyan Lao Er after you got your grades in the 1st grade. I got it for you, and when you sent a love letter to a girl in your class in the 2nd grade of junior high school, I made her think it was written by me, but you can't blame me. Who asked you to write a love letter without even signing it, and she came to ask me, I admitted it smoothly. Chen's Lu, haha. Scum. During the more than 20 years of schooling, he lived in the shadow of Ji Chang's almost all the time. It was like this every time in elementary school, junior high school, and university. The key was that every time he told others, they would tell him with a sure face. How could be? Ji Chang's is not this kind of person, you just have a problem with him. That's frustrating. Today, the clouds finally cleared and the moon shone brightly. This scumbag admitted it, ha 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 ha. Chen's Lu Yi swept away the depression he had felt all day, and looked at Ji Chang's with some pride. So you want to seek peace now? Dream on, for those things you did before, do you think I will forgive you if you admit it? Ji Chang's, I really didn't mean it. The teacher asked us to raise tadpoles for observation. I raised 2 tadpoles and they all grew into frogs. You raised 10 and they all died. I gave you the frog out of kindness. Although Chen's Lu is afraid of frogs. The one with the sticker was even more kind. At that time, the person in front of you was also stickered. You and he never dealt with each other. He was tall and strong and always liked to cause trouble for you. You think he found out that he had been stickered and he hadn't been there before. When you realize it, do you think who posted it for you? Chen Dailu, it should be me, right? Yes, I just put a sticker on you. Since both of you have been posted, he will definitely have no reason to trouble you again. Although the paper on the back of the person in front was also posted by the original owner, and he went to that person afterwards to press him, saying that his paper was posted by Chen Lu, and Chen Lu's paper was posted by Chen Lu himself, just to get rid of it. Suspicion. But that person later went abroad. Looking at the situation, he might never come back in his life, so he had nothing to fear. There are also love letters. You really can't blame me for this. You wrote a love letter without even signing it. The girl came to me and asked me if I wrote it. She handed me the love letter and rejected me, saying that I didn't want to be with someone who didn't even have punctuation marks. The person who marked the right mark is talking about the target. Should I tell her that the person who marked the wrong mark was you and not me? Ji Chang's let out a long sigh. I thought, you were very sad to be rejected, and you have to face that you are a scumbag who can't even mark punctuation marks. You must be in a bad mood, so. Brave, I'm willing to help you block this blame, but you don't appreciate it, and you haven't given me a good look for a whole semester. Chen's Lu, that's a punctuation mark I created to express my wholehearted devotion to her. What about Wanyan Lao Er? You don't have to say this, right? It's a derogatory term. Ji Changs, aren't you the second best student in 10,000 years? Isn't it true that every time I take the first place, you take the second place? Chen's Lu. You are the second child in 10,000 years. Even if I don't give you this nickname, others will still think of you that way. And you also gave me a nickname. Don't say you didn't. I know you did. Chen Dai Lu. He was speechless. But how is this possible? In his impression, Ji Changs has always been targeting him. Why is it that when this guy says this now, it seems that he is too narrow-minded and has misunderstood others? Impossible, his memory is infallible. Memory is infallible, but it's up to you to decide whether this memory is good or bad. Just like that frog, you just remember that I put a frog in the hole in your desk and it scared you in class. Cry, why didn't you remember the nature class in the afternoon? The teacher praised you for raising the best frogs. Chen Lu was stunned. Is this happening? Ji Changs nodded affirmatively. If you don't believe it, go back and ask your parents. As for your show-off temperament, if the teacher praises you, you will definitely tell them, and they will definitely be impressed. When he said this, Chen Lu also vaguely felt that this was the case. He was quite happy to be praised. Then, I really misunderstood you. Ji Changs nodded heavily and sighed. We all grew up together, and there is no deep hatred. There is no need for me to target you. It seems to make sense. Wrong. Chen Dai Lu, you haven't even given me a good look. Isn't this called targeting? Ji Changs, you look at me like an enemy every day. I'm not a bitch, but I'm still like this. Why do I still want to play with you? But now that we are adults, it's okay to just let it go. Chen's Lu, that's not right. Since you haven't been home all this time because of the training of the Bei clan, why didn't you give Xiaobao a longevity lock when he was 1 month old? This is the tradition of our village. Did you not plan to attend Xiaobao's full moon banquet at that time? Did you decide to attend after knowing that I didn't ask for a longevity lock? Chen Dai Lu, yes. Ji Changs spread his hands. That's enough. Chen's Lu, are you saying that you deliberately didn't ask for the longevity lock just to let me attend the full moon banquet? Then just tell me no. Ji Changs, you were looking at me with eyes that were not my eyes or my nose. How could I be so embarrassed to look for you? Of course I had to be tactful, otherwise others would think I had no temper. Chen De Lu, the logic seems to be fine. Is this really the case? Ji Changs stretched out his hand to him and showed a friendly smile. Come on, shake hands and make peace. I don't care about the past. Chen Lu hesitantly reached out his hand to shake Ji Chang's hand. Just wait, I will ask my parents when I get back. If the frog thing is true, I will forgive you for the sake of Junyuan and Xiaobao. Seeing that there were no wild boars around the car, he got out of the car and ran to the off-road vehicle behind to doubt his life. Could it be that he really misunderstood? Ji Changs never targeted him, but did he think too much? Can't. But what Ji Changs said seems to make sense. Forget it, just go back and ask your parents. Ji Changs sat steadily on the roof of the RV, looking at the wild boars that had been completely scattered like bereft dogs. It seems that there is pork to eat today. He can use drones to deliver pork to the village of elementary school teachers who teach nature classes. Thanks to this teacher who attaches great importance to children's self-confidence, he secretly praised all the children, and the words of praise were the same. XX, you are so awesome, you are the only one in our class who has the best and most energetic frogs. The teacher will give you a little red flower, but don't tell other children that you are the best, otherwise the children will know that their own is not the best and energetic. I'm going to be sad. Come on, I'll give you a little red flower. It's great. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Tang Zhonmao. Chapter 98. Guo's neighbors were in a state of confusion. She just laughed at Father Guo and Mother Guo for their whims. As a result, several cars entered the village today, and they marched forward bravely with bows and arrows. Then the wild boars ran to death and were injured. With just 2 vehicles, so many wild boars were driven away in the end. This is not the most important thing. The most important thing is that when she was lying on the wall and looking out, she clearly saw the Guo family's son-in-law knocking on the door next door. Is what the Guo family said yesterday actually true? Their son-in-law, who looked very polite and could not be beaten, actually picked them up. The commotion was so loud before that people in the village were clamored to climb the walls to see what was going on outside. Basically no one missed that Ji Chang's and his group were killing wild boars in all directions, and the wild boars fled. Their village is safe. And all this happened because the Guo family's son-in-law came to pick up his father-in-law and mother-in-law. The villagers came to watch as they cautiously left the house. Father Guo and Mother Guo had never been outstanding, but today, they rarely held their heads high and walked out openly. Every move is filled with pride. Of course, I am not proud of myself, but proud of my daughter and son-in-law. Look, I told you that we only have one daughter. There are always those people who gossip behind their backs and say that if they treat their daughter so well, it will be in vain for her daughter to get married in the future. What happened to my daughter? Their daughter is very filial, and their son-in-law is also kind to them. He came here specially to kill a wild boar to pick them up. Who has such a good son and son-in-law? The two of them felt that the suffocation of having been secretly forced upon by certain people for so many years was gone, and they got into the RV with their heads held high. The two villages were still quite far apart. Guo's father and Guo's mother had no other relatives in the village. Ji Chang's didn't feel at ease leaving the two elders here, so he simply took them to their village directly. This is also what Ji's parents meant. Both of them can understand it, just like saying that the situation in their village is poor. Guo Junyuan will definitely take them to the Guo family, and now that everything is in chaos, there is no need to apply for anything to build a house in the village like before. Yes, Father Guo and Mother Guo are sponsoring the Ji family, so they can just build another house. As for eating and drinking, there is well water in the village and Ji Chang's has a water purifier. As for eating, their group, including Chen Lu, have already practiced it along the way. If they want to eat meat, they can catch prey at any time. If they want to eat vegetables, there is so much land, let alone food. The crops are all growing tall and strong now, and they are particularly easy to feed. As long as the village overcomes the beast problem, it will definitely be able to live a good life. Ji Chang's and the others smoothly took Guo's father and Guo's mother to their home. Chen Lu also went to ask his parents. When he was in first grade, one day he ran home very excitedly and told his parents that the frog he had raised was the best. Chen Lu. Is this actually true? So, he actually misunderstood Ji Chang's for so long? Chen Lu was stunned. He has long been accustomed to tit for tat with Ji Chang's. When he was in school, he worked so hard just so that one day he could crush Ji Chang's under his feet and let this guy get the nickname Wanyan Lao Er. As a result, now, he actually misunderstood me. Moreover, Ji Chang's extended a paw of friendship to him. But, how to maintain friendship with Ji Chang's? He was only used to yelling at Ji Chang's, scolding Ji Chang's, and killing Ji Chang's with his eyes. Friendship. The thought of his friendship with Ji Chang's gave him goosebumps all over his body. Ji Chang's kindly helped Chen Lu answer the question how to maintain friendship with myself. It's very simple. You just need to vote for me when the lords vote. Yes, lords vote. Because Ji Chang's and others working in the city came back and brought news that the whole world had been changed by this catastrophe, the elders in the village decided not to wait for national rescue like before, but to work hard on their own to save them. Village. If I want to live a new life in this new world, my former village party secretary is not suitable. Although he has great prestige in the village, he is old and does not understand the outside situation and has no strength. In the past, the most he could do was to repeat the instructions given by his superiors to the villagers. Now he is asked to do it under such circumstances. Leading the whole village to live together is really stressful. Then, new leaders will be voted on. The reason why we don't talk about voting for the village party secretary or village chief is because some young people in the village feel that it is not impressive enough to speak out like this. After all, with the chaos outside, it is inevitable for everyone to claim to be powerful. At that time, if an outsider comes to their place, they will introduce, "Hello, hello, this is our village chief." I feel embarrassed just thinking about it. But other names didn't seem to work well. The generals all felt that ancient times were more suitable, and the city lord and his village were not that big. After much deliberation, they settled on the title Lord. It sounds bige enough and not too boastful. Ji Chang's participated. As expected, he led the people back to the village, lured away the lions, killed the wild boar and came back with a bunch of wild boar meat. Chen's Lu, but I also want to apply to participate. Ji Chang's, no, you don't want to. I really want to. Do you have any leadership experience? Chen's Lu hesitated for a moment, then whispered in a slightly embarrassed voice, I was the monitor in both primary school and junior high school. Ji Chang's, you have been the monitor 4 times in elementary school and junior high school combined, but I have been the monitor 5 times. Chen Dailu. He couldn't even remember how many times he had been a kid. How could Ji Chang's remember it so clearly? Ji Chang's, because we have always been in the same class. When I was not the monitor, you were the monitor. Let me remind you again, I was the monitor for 3 years in high school, 8 times in total, twice as many as you. Do you think you can compete with me? Chen Dailu. In the end, he reluctantly voted for Ji Chang's. Forget it, it was his fault for misunderstanding Ji Chang's before, so I will let this guy do it this time. When the village party secretary announced that the voting result was Ji Chang's being elected as the Lord, he saw that the losers were not too disappointed and suddenly came to their senses. No, running for Lord is not running for squad leader. Why should the one who has been squad leader more times become stronger? Aren't those who haven't studied much before also run for office? Although I didn't choose it. Ji Chang's was clearly trying to trick him. When faced with Chen Lu's questioning, Ji Chang's said, you were the one who first brought up the squad leader to talk about the matter. I just followed your words. Chen's Lu. It seems like this is really the case. He returned home depressed, but the Chen family's parents were not as disappointed as their son. My family knows my family. They know better than anyone what kind of virtue their son has. He has been stupid since he was a child. Even though they want to boast about Chen Lu to the sky, in fact they know it very well in their hearts. Isn't it okay? If they don't build a strong image of their son, how will he find a partner in the future? He's such an old man. Ji Chang's kid next door has almost learned to speak, and he doesn't even have a partner. Chen's Lu becomes the Lord? Come on, stop dragging their entire village into the ditch. On this day, Ji Chang's was successfully elected as Lord. In the village next door, Lu, a retired teacher who once taught nature lessons for Ji Chang's Chen, was staring at a nest of potatoes in his yard with his hands behind his back and his eyebrows deep in thought. Since the world has changed, their family has not dared to leave the house. Fortunately, the 2 elders are too old to take care of the land, so they only have a small vegetable garden in the yard. Anyway, there is definitely enough to eat, but vegetables can still be grown, but there is really no hope for meat. He just loves to eat meat, isn't that a tragedy? After looking at his hands behind his back for a while, he took out his scratch paper and began to draw braised pork on the potatoes. 4 cubes, sizzling with oil. Braised pork is all about fat and thin, it tastes great when you take a bite. Suck slip. His wife came out of the house and saw him mocking him. Don't look at it. Even those potatoes can't be turned into meat. You might as well hope for meat to fall from the sky. The old teacher was leisurely and continued to draw meat to satisfy his craving. In this world, one potato plant can grow a pot, and vegetables grow half a man high. Why can't meat fall from the sky? Maybe I point to the sky. It just fell off. My wife almost died laughing, pointed to me. The old teacher pointed to the sky casually. It happened that the drone flew over the top of his yard. Bang, a bag of meat fell down and landed right in the middle of the yard. Old teacher. His wife. It's incredible, meat can really fall from the sky. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Tang Zhonmao. Chapter 99. The third year after the meteorite rain. A car drove out among the grass that was taller than a person. This car is really higher than before the end of the world. The whole car is a giant. The body is welded with iron wires. The roof is covered with a green plastic sheet. If you look at it from a high altitude, it can be perfectly hidden in the grass. Although this car has a unique shape, it is very common in major bases today. After all, plants grow very fast. Even if you cut down a road, there are not as many humans as there were before the end of the world, and you can still cut down everywhere. So this car can perfectly blend into the environment without losing sight of the road ahead. Just appeared. The car was driving, and the driver seemed to see something and brake suddenly. A young woman with a big belly quickly sat up straight in the car and asked, "What's wrong?" The driver turned around to reassure her, "It's okay, there are just snakes passing by. Just wait until they pass." Yes, after the great disaster, the human population declined sharply, but the animals were only partially affected. And because most animals can reach adulthood in a very short period of time, now that there is no human interference, they have grown and grown. After rebirth, the planet is now an entire animal world. The situation has reversed. The beasts who once turned around and ran away when they saw humans have become more generous. If there are those with strong desire to attack, they may even take the initiative to attack. Fortunately, they encountered a group of snakes this time. Although today's snakes are very venomous and not afraid of people, they also have no interest in attacking people. After all, even if they are numerous and large, they are still there, and they are basically not interested in prey that they cannot swallow. But the danger is real. The pregnant woman touched her belly and looked out of the car window. She looked worried at the group of colorful snakes that seemed to contain poisonous snakes leisurely passing by. "We have just entered the Dongan territory and have encountered so many wild beasts. Are you sure it is really suitable for living?" "Don't worry, Qian, I've made it clear. Although Dongan doesn't often interact with outsiders, every time the major bases hold fairs, the Dongan people are well dressed, and most of the food they bring is food and beast meat. I used to the faces of the few Dongan people I have contacted are all rosy. Don't worry, although they are xenophobic, you can get resettlement as long as you join Dongan. And if you are pregnant, Dongan is quite friendly to pregnant women." Yes, the pregnant woman was Zheng Qian, whom Ji Changs and the others met by chance 3 years ago, and the driver was Hu Hao. 3 years ago, after they parted ways with Ji Changs and his party, they went to Hu Hao's hometown as planned. However, Hu Hao's grandparents had already passed away when they went there. After feeling sad, the two decided to settle in place. Almost half a year later, various places have their own forces and major bases have been established. They have also moved to the nearest base. The two have become husband and wife and support each other. They are both young. Although they have no background, they have gradually practiced with his good skills. Although his life was not to say very good, it was enough for him to have enough food and clothing. Originally, it was okay for the two of them to continue like this, but this year Zheng Qianqian became pregnant. They are two adults, so it doesn't matter how they live or endure hardships. But when the child is born, do they have to let the fragile baby live with them in a concentrated house where the summer is hot and the winter is cold, and eat food without any seasoning? In addition, although the base maintains a superficial peace, in today's world, there are always people who will take desperate risks. Even if the sentences in the base are severe, the two of them often hear that the husband went out hunting and returned home only to find that the whole family died tragically, and young children only things like the child disappears after half an hour without being looked after, and half a month later the child's clothes are found thrown in a mass grave. Children are too weak, and after giving birth, Zheng Qianqian has no fighting ability. Hu Hao is no longer as naive as he was back then. He has to grow up as a husband and a father. After careful consideration, he decided to take his wife to Dong'an City. Dong'an City has always been a frequently mentioned word in major bases. It is said that Dong'an City was originally just a small village. After the end of the world, it named itself Dong'an and voted for its lord. They have developed at a rocket speed, not only developing themselves but also absorbing people from other walks of life. The first time people in the base knew about Dong'an was because they sent people out to buy a group of teenage children back. Yes, nowadays the law of the jungle prevails, and slavery naturally arises. However, although these sales have not been officially cracked down or allowed, you can buy slaves. Whether these slaves can work with peace of mind in the hands of buyers depends on the abilities of the buyers themselves. Some people buy slaves because they cannot get a wife, and some people just want to find a job. In short, there are countless reasons for buying slaves, and the sellers are not interested in asking them one by one. When Dong'an first started buying people, these people didn't think anything of it. A few years later, the slaves who had been bought actually returned to the base as residents of Dong'an to purchase and replace them. At first, they were all skinny, their faces were sallow, they could walk unsteadily, and they all looked either numb or in a hurry. Looking at it later, they all straightened their backs, the clothes they were wearing were actually made of good fabrics, they spoke confidently, their faces were rosy, and they even ate rice when they ate. Although there is rice in the base, it is very expensive because it is easy to be coveted by wild animals when farming outside. The most common food for ordinary people is yellow pancakes, which are hard enough to be used as bricks if they are slightly cold. Dong'an was able to take these slaves as residents and train them so well, which immediately aroused heated discussion among the residents in the base. These young people came here for a purpose other than shopping. They answered all the questions asked by those who came to inquire. They also specifically said that Dong'an was willing to accommodate others to settle, but they had to register as Dong'an residents and were not allowed to leave within a year. Dong'an, wait until Dong'an City ensures that this person is not dangerous, and he will be able to come and go freely after he is loyal enough to Dong'an. It is very risky for people nowadays to ask people to go to a strange place and not be able to come out within a year. But in the face of hunger and cold, these people still chose to go to Dong'an with their families. Without exception, they showed up a year later, with cheerful and confident smiles, proving the safety of Dong'an with themselves. In the past 3 years, at least 15,000 people from major bases have gone to Dong'an, and Dong'an has gradually become a paradise in everyone's mind. Half a month ago, Dong'an announced that the population was temporarily full, and now it is the busy farming season. The whole city is too busy to spare. They will no longer send people out to guide the way. If anyone wants to live in Dong'an, they need to go there by themselves. Dong'an, and they will no longer accept everyone as they did before, but will conduct assessments. As for the content of the exam, it's random. Hu Hao and Zheng Qianqian had been hesitating before, and finally made up their mind, but when Dong'an stopped taking the initiative to accept people, they gritted their teeth and finally decided to embark on the road to Dong'an by themselves. I heard that if you see swarms of venomous snakes, it's Dong'an. It seems like it's coming soon. Hu Hao waited patiently for the swarm of poisonous snakes to pass before carefully driving the car forward. The reason why Dong'an feels safe in major bases is because of their special boundaries. It is said that although they are located in a land that is open to all directions, there are fierce beasts entrenched in all three directions. If there is someone who covets Dong'an's wealth, if you want to attack, you must consider whether it is a gift of food or meat. On one side there are venomous snakes, on the other side there are mountains of wild boars, and on the other side there is a dense forest surrounded by bees. The only way in and out is covered with man-eating vines. It's strange to say that man-eating vines are everywhere. Everyone knows that they can swallow an entire human being. One plant is enough trouble. Dong'an Road is actually covered with man-eating vines, and they will not attack Dong'an. Many people have studied it countless times and still can't find the reason. These man-eating vines are equivalent to the best guards for Dong'an. Naturally, Dong'an will not tell others what methods they use to prevent the man-eating vines from attacking their own family. It's here, it's here. After driving for another half hour, the two finally saw the densely packed road ahead of them, with some people waiting in front. This road is filled with greenery, and it looks a bit as beautiful as the green corridors of tourist attractions in the past, but no one dares to get close. Hu Hao asked Zheng Qianqian to rest in the car, got out of the car, took out a few peanuts from his pocket, and handed them to the man closest to him. "Brother, have some snacks. Now that supplies are scarce, peanuts are also a good thing for them." The man happily took it and listened to Hu Hao ask, "Why doesn't everyone go in? How dare you go in? It's not like you have a long life. Did you see the sign in front? Dong'an City List said they would only send people out at 9 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon. There are still 20 minutes. Be patient." "Wait, then." Hu Hao looked over and saw a sign there. Knowing that someone would come out to pick him up made him feel more at ease. He chatted with the man for a while and found out that in 20 minutes someone from Dong'an City would come to arrange the exam. If he passed the exam, he would be able to enter the outer city. It was said that after he accumulated enough points, he would be able to enter the outer city. Only those who can live in the inner city and enter the inner city can be considered a true Dong'an person. While they were chatting, a group of people came from the other end of the Vine Road. Hu Hao has seen a lot of people in the past 3 years, but he has rarely seen guards like this one. Although they have a unique aura of toughness in the apocalypse, they have a calm aura, no impatience on their bodies, and even a few auras. The younger guard's eyes were full of curiosity, and his face was full of innocence and simplicity that should be expected at this age. Innocence and simplicity. Before the apocalypse, many people in their 20s had the same temperament, but after the apocalypse, even children as young as 7 or 8 would no longer be naive. To be able to develop this kind of temperament, there must be no disputes in the place where you live. You don't have to worry about life, and you don't have to worry about someone having harmful intentions. Beware of everything. Hu Hao had expectations for Dong'an City in his heart. He saw everyone lining up and hurried back to help Zheng Qianqian down to line up. The man who was talking to him before looked at Zheng Qianqian's pregnant belly with envy in his eyes. "Dude, your wife is pregnant." Hu Hao nodded, "Yes. Then you'll probably be able to enter Dong'an City. Dong'an City welcomes pregnant women. After all, children are Dong'an residents as soon as they are born, and they can be taught from an early age. After the end of the world, the number of women has dropped sharply. Even if they survive, some women are unable to get pregnant due to cold or injury. Unlike animals that reproduce like crazy, there will be very few children born in the 3 years of the end of the world, so it is normal for Dong'an to attach great importance to pregnant women." This man was right. When it was Hu Hao and Zheng Qianqian's turn in line, the guard noticed that Zheng Qianqian had a pregnant belly. He immediately sent a doctor to check his pulse and confirmed that Zheng Qianqian was indeed pregnant. After that, and the two were husband and wife, he asked some questions. The question announced that they could enter the outer city of Dong'an. Hu Hao and Zheng Qianqian were somewhat uneasy and wary. After all, they had just arrived in a new place. But following the guards through the vine road, they were all stunned before they reached the gates of Dong'an city. There are towering cities in front of them. There are many fertile fields outside. Many people are working in the fields in an orderly manner, and some people are passing by on bicycles. People were accustomed to guards bringing people back, so they only took one look and continued to do their own business. Some children running around and playing were very curious about them and came around to look at them curiously. A child who was only about 5 or 6 years old was holding a small windmill made of wood in his hand. He ran over and threw himself into the arms of a guard. He looked at the pregnant Zheng Qianqian curiously. "Brother, this sister's belly is as big as Teacher Wu." This guard was the young man who was obviously inexperienced and a little naive that Hu Hao had observed before. He looked to be only 16 or 17 years old, and softly coaxed his younger brother, "This sister has a baby in her belly just like Teacher Wu, so she has a baby in her belly duh, please stop here, my brother is still at work." The child responded, turned around and ran back with the windmill in his hand. Hu Hao and Zheng Qianqian were both a little stunned. Busy but ordinary life, children who can play outside freely, and bustling streets, they have not seen these for a long time. The two of them looked at the child who had run away, feeling hopeful in their hearts. If their children could be born in Dong'an city, would they be like this child? They would no longer have to worry about disappearing without a trace, and would not have to worry about not having enough to eat and being too cold to sleep at night. They were then placed in the same place where the outsiders lived when they first entered Dong'an city. Because they were a couple and Zheng Qianqian was pregnant, they shared a room for two. After such an anxious and hopeful night's rest, Zheng Qianqian was scheduled for a physical examination the next day, while Hu Hao was sent to collect honey. Although collecting honey is tiring, it is not very hard. As long as the body is covered with a plant liquid, the bees will naturally not attack humans. Hu Hao brought a small spoonful of honey to Zheng Qianqian when he came back that day. The two of them soaked it in water. You took a sip and I took a sip. The sweet taste was on the tip of your tongue, and you felt peace in your heart. I heard that these plant liquids were extracted by the Lord himself and then put into use after practice. The reason why the man-eating vines outside don't attack people is because the people in Dong'an city have been vaccinated, so the man-eating vines will naturally not attack them. The reagent they were sprayed on when they came in only has a short-term effect. Once they accumulate enough points, they will be truly recognized as Dong'an. Only urban residents will be vaccinated and can come and go normally. The reason why the city is so prosperous is also because of the various policies proposed by the Lord. He opened fertile fields, built cities, and developed areas where animals were originally threatening, and turned those beasts that others would be afraid of into guards of Dong'an city. The poisonous snakes are made into weapons, the honey from bees is extracted and edible, and wild boars deliberately create an environment suitable for them to breed, and people are sent to feed them. According to this situation, even if Dong'an city never communicates with the outside world, it will definitely be able to live well. What excites the two most is the most different place between Dong'an city and the outside world. Dong'an city supports technology. It is said that the Dong'an Science and Technology Institute uses the most resources in Dong'an. Although it has not yet returned to the situation before the end of the world when everyone used mobile phones and computers to communicate, order takeout when they wanted to eat, take the subway when going out, and fly when traveling, we have also found devices that can communicate remotely. At least you can have hot water in the shower, electricity at home, and a flush toilet. Although these require points to exchange for, almost everyone who has saved enough points will not give up. These things that were most common before the end of the world are now hope. Because Zheng Qianqian is a pregnant woman, she gets a points subsidy every month, and some light jobs are arranged for her in the city. Hu Hao is not afraid of hard work and has been working hard to save points. Before the child was born, their small family almost had enough of these. Something. The two of them were grateful to Dong'an City. I am grateful that at this moment, there is still a pure land. At the same time, they also admired Lord Dong'an, who could be said to have established such prosperity with his own efforts. It's just that the Lord is always busy with affairs, so naturally they can't be seen when they live in the outer city. In the 6th year of the end of the world, Dong'an City announced that television could be broadcast. The residents in the city went to buy TVs with excitement, and Hu Hao was the same. That day, at 8 o'clock in the evening, almost all the residents sat in front of the TV and excitedly clicked on Program 1. On the screen, Ji Chang's appeared in front of them and began to talk in official language about what achievements Dong'an had made over the years, how many years they planned to return to pre-apocalyptic standards, and so on. Hu Hao and Zheng Qianqian were stunned when they looked at that familiar face. Their children didn't know Ji Chang's. They just clapped their little hands and imitated the people on TV in a babyish voice, "Restore the standards, restore the standards." The screen turned to the person sitting next to Ji Chang's. He and Guo Junyuan were sitting on the same sofa, and their 6-year-old child sat between them, wearing a neat dress, like a little adult. Ji Chang's hand fell softly behind his son to prevent him from accidentally falling. The screen turned, and it was the reporter speaking. Since the Lord became the Lord of Dong'an, he has built cities, cultivated fertile fields, erected protection, and explored the functions of plants to the end. He has experimented with the effects of plants time and time again, making huge contributions to medicine, architecture, and city defense. Contribution: given time, we may not be able to return to the modern society before the meteorite rain fell. Next, please ask Minister of Justice Lu Chen to let us see what it will be like overlooking Dong'an City. He's really a senior. Hu Hao was quite unbelievable. Senior is actually our Lord of Dong'an. If I hadn't seen my sister-in-law, I wouldn't have dared to recognize her. Zheng Qianqian was also a little confused. After entering Dong'an, she had always heard praises about the Lord, and she admired him very much in her heart. As a result, the Lord turned out to be Ji Chang's. So magical. Their children were at the age where they liked to talk. When they heard the two talking, they raised their heads curiously. "Do your parents know him?" Zheng Qianqian was stunned and looked at the safely operating Anton City on the screen. He recalled his prejudice against Ji Chang's and his disdain for thinking that he was trying to cheat on her in marriage. Then he recalled his gentleness when he and Guo Junyuan looked at each other on the screen, and smiled relaxedly. Sure enough, she was still too young before. Actually trust your intuition. She held the child in her arms and said gently, "I know him. He is a very good person. When the baby grows up, he should learn from him, okay?" In the 10th year of the end of the world, Anton City began to throw out new energy and new technology to the outside world. In the 30th year of the end of the world, with the efforts of all mankind, major cities are finally on the right track. Humanity has returned to modern society again, roads have been rebuilt, planes have once again flown to high altitudes, and various food delivery apps have topped the download rankings. Later, in order to commemorate this difficult return of mankind, this era was called the New Era. Although the crazy growth of plants cannot be changed, for this planet, it may not be a bad thing to return to an era when green everywhere, blue skies, white clouds, clear water and mountains can be seen at a glance. In the 49th year of the new era, Mr. Ji Chang's, the biggest influencer who helped all mankind escape from this catastrophe and return to modern society, passed away on the same day as his wife. Flags around the world were flown at half-mast. The disaster will eventually pass, and its greatest benefit is that humans learn to cherish it. Ding. The mission is completed, please select vacation to continue the mission. Continue the mission. Ji Chang's woke up and found himself standing in front of a courtyard that looked very shabby at first glance. Someone behind him said to him, "Sir, although this yamen is a little dilapidated, this area is also famous for being a remote and shabby place. Sure enough, there are still some rich people in the local area who are well off. The official has already said that you are the son-in-law of the Wei family. With the Wei family behind them, how dare they not pay, and then mention this tax, and they can make another fortune." Ji Chang's looked back at the person standing behind him. Wearing grey clothes, with narrowed eyes and two handlebar mustache, he was smiling tacitly at him. "Sir, you see, it was Xiaoguan who gave you the idea to ask for money from a wealthy family. Xiaoguan's family is not well off either. You see." "Yeah, I got it. He is a corrupt official, and he is a corrupt official. Everyone knows I'm a good man." Author, Tang Zhonmao. Chapter 100. Ji Chang's checked his memory. Sure enough, I guessed it right, he is a corrupt official. This is the country of Daon. The original owner's name is Ji Cheng. His family was originally a merchant. He has lived in Minjiao County for generations. The Ji family has no background. Fortunately, his father's generation is diligent. Although he is not said to be rich, compared to ordinary people, he is still quite rich. Daon is a country with very strict rules. Anyone who enters a merchant house cannot be scientifically tested within 3 generations. It happens to be 3 generations past the original owner's generation. He was originally the only son in the family, so the whole family suddenly regarded him as the hope that the Ji family could leave the business family. He had been pampered by the whole family since he was a child. The original owner also lived up to expectations. He had some talent in reading and passed the exam smoothly. Although he was not very talented, his knowledge was at least above average. Han Chuang studied hard, went to Beijing to take the exam, and got a 2nd grade. He was already very lucky, but in the end, he got a piece of cake from the sky and made a well-educated and upright daughter of an official family become his wife. It seems that the original owner was lucky. At that time, the candidates went to Beijing to take the exam, and everyone had to party. He also partied when others were partying. As a result, he bumped into a woman at the party. There was something wrong with her clothes. The outer ribbon was broken, and her coat was in front of him. The face fell. The An dynasty was a very magical dynasty. It was said that they had strict management of women, but there was no hindrance for women to go out. Unmarried girls had to wear curtains and hats, but married women did not have to be confined at home. Most of the girls from powerful families in the capital also they both love reading and partying. For example, the reason why the original owner bumped into this girl this time was because the party he attended was for both men and women. It was just a men's side and a women's side, with a screen in the middle. But it is not strict with women, and the protection between men and women is very important. Those who are engaged in public can chat in front of their elders, but they are not allowed to have any contact with foreign men. Although the girl only dropped her shirt and didn't reveal anything that shouldn't be exposed, she was in a situation like on KO and in front of several girls. She only had 3 choices, one was to die, the other was to die. Being a sister-in-law, the third thing is to marry the man. So, the original owner got a daughter-in-law. This marriage was considered a high priority for him. After all, although he was the eldest son, this girl was the legitimate daughter of Lord Wei, the imperial censor. Among the imperial censors of the An dynasty, the prime minister was a third-rank official, which was beyond the reach of the original owner. In addition, the Wei family was a large aristocratic family. The Wei family had many children, most of whom were officials, and their family property was also famous for its richness. The Wei family has many heirs, and when the children grow up, they will be married, and the children born from the marriage will be married again. It is no exaggeration to say that 1/3 of the officials in the court are related to the Wei family. It is conceivable that his marriage to the Wei family is equivalent to having a company of backers behind him, and his official career will surely rise rapidly. When the original owner knew that he was about to marry such a golden baby, he was naturally overjoyed. However, within a few days of being happy, he learned the fact that although Mr. Wei was from the Wei family, he was not actually close to the main clan of the Wei family. It is said that Mr. Wei was just a branch of the clan at first. Something happened to his father, who was the mainstay of the family. A tyrant in the clan invaded the fertile land of their clan. His mother was seriously ill at the time and needed money to buy medicine. She hurriedly went to the clan to ask for help. Shelter. However, the people in the clan looked on with cold eyes. Eventually, his mother passed away due to illness, and their family's property was occupied, leaving only a broken house. Mr. Wei kept his filial piety while studying hard, and then passed the exams all the way, and finally reached his current official position. Although the Wei family is an aristocratic family with many children serving as officials in the court, it has declined in recent years and has not been able to provide a third-rank official. However, this side branch who has never been close to the family has stood at the position of third-rank official. Superior. The censor Zhong Cheng had the power to impeach the 3 nobles and 9 ministers, and Mr. Wei was highly valued by the emperor, so the family began to want to get back together. However, Mr. Wei was always lukewarm, preferring to be thought that he was disrespectful to his elders. Not willing to greet people with a smile. The family could not sue him and ask him to reveal the past that the Wei family allowed their children to bully orphans and widows, and robbed other people's property, leading to the death of Mr. Wei's mother. The Wei family has long been accustomed to being aloof, and seeing Mr. Wei unwilling to surrender, he also became angry, and the 2 parties stopped interacting with each other. To put it bluntly, Mr. Wei just had a falling out with his family and wanted to set up his own business. Not only would the Wei family not be able to bring him and his son-in-law any help, they might even get in the way because of the resentment in his heart. And Shili Hongchuang, who the original owner was looking forward to very much, is gone. Mr. Wei is incorruptible. Although his family also has property, even if he saves a dowry for his daughter from the time she is born, he will definitely still be inferior to other wealthy colleagues of the same rank. It stands to reason that a skinny camel is bigger than a horse. Even if the dowry given by the Wei family is not comparable to others, it is more than enough for the original owner of a wealthy family. Mr. Wei is a man of upright character. Although he will not give H0 Yumian to his son-in-law, having such a father-in-law will be enough for him to be favored by his superiors when he enters the court and becomes an official. But people's hearts are not as strong as snakes swallowing elephants. The original owner originally thought that after marrying his wife, he would be able to fly into the sky with a rocket, but in the end he still had to rely on himself, and he suddenly felt dissatisfied. As for Miss Wei, the break of her belt that day was actually not an accident, but was caused by another girl with whom she had a bad relationship. At that time, the 3rd prince had reached the age of getting married. The 3rd prince was born to the empress, his status was respected, and he had always been extremely popular with the emperor. Although many people said nothing on the surface, they believed in their hearts that the 3rd prince was the future prince. If you marry him, won't you become a queen in the future? Mr. Wei has always been loved and respected by His Majesty, and Miss Wei is extremely beautiful. She has always been well educated, calm, and generous, and has been well educated. At that time, the queen summoned girls of suitable age from the minister's family to hold a flower banquet in the palace. Miss Wei was very popular with the queen and even gave her a pair of jade bracelets. If something is not done, the position of the 3rd imperial concubine will be gone. So, this accident happened. The daughter of the royal censor Zhong Cheng, who was originally the jewel in the family, had to be given up to a businessman. Even if he was admitted to the first class and entered the Hanlin Academy, he would only be qualified, not to mention that the original owner only entered the second class. Still at the bottom of the second division, the results are not outstanding. For the ladies in the capital, Miss Wei's life is over. If she is married and obeys her husband, it will be useless no matter how good her moral character or ability is if her husband cannot get up. But the girl who arranged this situation didn't give up, and arranged for someone to talk to the original owner, and fabricated a series of the belt falling was not an accident, but Miss Wei did it intentionally. Her original intention was to do it that day he fell in front of the third prince who came to attend the banquet so that he could marry the third prince smoothly. The original owner believed it. The clothes of wealthy families are made of the best materials, and even if Mr. Wei is an honest daughter, it is impossible for her to wear cheap and easily broken clothes. What's more, the third prince is gaining momentum and uses himself to save others. If it were him, he would naturally choose the third prince. As a result, the original owner felt disgusted with Miss Wei from the bottom of his heart. He hated her for being shameless. A daughter's family planned a marriage in this way, but they did not dare to offend her for fear of provoking Mr. Wei behind her to settle accounts. Feeling that it was too aggrieved for him as a dignified man to have to please a weak female prostitute, the original owner became more and more repelled by Miss Wei. Later, the head of the Wei family asked him to come to this barren Kawiliu County as magistrate, and the original owner became even more resentful. Although the county magistrate is the largest in the county, his official rank is only 8th grade. He is a scholar, and he can be a county magistrate after a lot of work. He is a disciple of the emperor, but he has fallen to this. Marry a woman whose father-in-law is incorruptible and refuses to help. He also wants to offend the Wei family. Although the dowry is large, it is difficult for him to appropriate it. The woman may still be thinking of other men in her heart. The original owner was still willing to show off when he was in the capital. When he arrived in Kawiliu County, it was his own territory, so he gradually became indifferent to Miss Wei. While using Mr. Wei's name to plunder the people's wealth in Kawiliu County, he exploited local wealthy households, increased taxes, and invaded fertile farmland. Although he did not take concubines directly, he raised many foreign concubines. Miss Wei was left out in the cold, and she didn't know where she had offended her husband, so she could only serve him carefully in a confused and aggrieved manner. The original owner was afraid that she would complain to Mr. Wei, so he did not dare to go too far. Later, Miss Wei became pregnant. She concentrated on the child and took good care of her body. She was doing well, but on the day of delivery, the original owner bribed the midwife. It was supposed that the mother and the child were safe, but in the end it turned out that the mother was left alone and the child was left alone. The position of the mistress was freed up. Firstly, he could take concubines openly and openly. Secondly, with Lord Wei's grandson in hand, he didn't have to worry about Lord Wei, his backer, not helping him. Poor Miss Wei, she was raised pampered and pampered, but in the end she died so mysteriously at the hands of her husband. In the second year after Miss Wei's death, the original owner bullied the people too much and went to Beijing to file a complaint. The imperial court sent people to investigate, and as expected, a large number of his crimes were found. He was sentenced to be beheaded. The child born to Miss Wei was enslaved when he was less than 2 years old due to his father's crime. Mr. Wei's political enemies also used this to drag him into trouble, and in the end he was stripped of his official title and ransacked his property. The current time period was not long after the original owner came to Kawiliu County, began to be cold to Miss Wei, and had just teamed up with the county magistrate to steal a sum of money from the wealthy households in Kawiliu County. In the eyes of today's wealthy households in Kawiliu County, he, the magistrate of Xinzi County, is a corrupt official. Although this is indeed true. The county magistrate next to him, who had "I am a standard villain" written all over his face, was still mumbling, mumbling, saying that it was not easy to support his family, and the magistrate sighed, etc., which was expressly and implicitly, and he always meant the same thing. It's time to divide the spoils, my lord. Ji Chang's turned a deaf ear and turned directly to walk outside. The county magistrate who was left behind was stunned for a few seconds. How could this new county magistrate be so shameless than him and so confident in evading payment? He hurriedly ran after him, and in the spirit of never abandoning or giving up, he ran to Ji Chang's side panting, "Sir, my family is poor. We have no rice to cook, and we can't even buy firewood for this stove. The weeping willows are barren, and the county government has always been unable to make ends meet. The previous mister who left in a hurry, and I haven't received my salary last year. Do you think?" The bearded county magistrate touched his mustache, smiled and rubbed his fingers at Ji Chang's, his eyes full of hints. Ji Chang's had already reached the gate of the county government office and was looking at the street outside. Kawiliu County is indeed a notoriously poor place. Look at the lois all over the land, look at the dilapidated houses, and look at the people with shabby clothes and sallow faces walking past in the distance. He looked back at the county government office again. Good guy, it was shabby enough on the inside, but it was even worse on the outside. The words on the plaque are almost blurred, and there are still many holes made by small insects on the door. The county magistrate next to him was still rubbing his fingers hard. "Sir, I haven't eaten yet today. My wife and children at home are still waiting for me to buy rice and go back to cook. So you should quickly share some of your money with me." Ji Chang's turned his head and looked at the county prime minister up and down with a look of pity. It turns out that the Wuxian prime minister's family is so poor. Answered the call. Answered the call. Will the next step be to pay? The county magistrate chuckled and nodded like a chicken pecking at rice, and his already not very pretty face became even more vulgar. He looked at Ji Chang's expectantly and saw the magistrate in front of him speaking with sympathy. "From then on, the food at your home will be taken care of by me, and you will eat at the county government office from now on." Wuxian Chang. Ji Chang's looked at him with a stiff face in surprise. "Why do you look at me like this?" "Oh." He pretended to be suddenly enlightened and nodded. "Wuxian Cheng is probably too grateful to me. There is no need to be like this. We are all colleagues and should support each other. Although I am also poor, it is enough to provide food and drink for your family." Poverty. Who was the unblinking lion who opened his mouth before? Wu Xianchang. "But sir, this is the silver you asked the rich households in the county for." Ji Chang's face was full of surprise. "I want it?" I'm afraid Wu County Prime Minister remembered it wrong. "When did I ask them for it? Didn't they voluntarily donate those to contribute their meager efforts to the construction of our county?" Wuxian Cheng was so troubled by these words that he couldn't think straight. Build. What's the meaning? No matter what it means, money is important. He tried hard to organize his words. "Sir, you promised Xiaoguan before that as long as Xianguan helps you find rich people to raise money, once the matter is completed, the benefits will inevitably come to Xiaoguan. You have eaten meat, so you should give some soup to the people below." "Hey, what I said will certainly count. In the eyes of the Prime Minister of Wu County, am I the kind of person who is dishonest?" Ji Chang's reached out and patted his shoulder in a friendly manner. "Look, this money will be used to improve the environment of Kawiliu County, help people get out of poverty, and promote the county's economy. This is a good thing, right?" Wu Xiancheng looked confused. He actually didn't understand much and could only get a rough idea. But even though the superior officer asked, he could only answer hesitantly, "Yes, right. Ji Chang's, Kawiliu County is barren. If you and I can work together to transform it into a prosperous place, where households are not closed at night, people are not picked up on the road, and everyone is well fed and well coated in the winter, then you, the county magistrate, will have done a great job. I want you to do it, then nothing good. What he said is quite right, but Wuxian is not stupid. It is obvious that he is trying to make a big deal out of him. Sir, the official's family is indeed short of money. Ji Chang sighed, stretched out his hand and held his hand. I also know your difficulties. Although the yamen is empty, I am willing to use my own money to return the salary owed to you by the yamen. The surprise came so quickly, Wuxian Cheng's eyes widened. Thank you, sir. There's no need to say thank you. Although you and I don't get along much, I can see your talents, conduct, and ability. If Ji Chang's wants to praise someone, he must be 100% sincere. The emotion is sincere, the tone is sighing, and the fair face is full of affirmation, which makes people believe it. Every time he said a word, Wuxian Cheng's waist straightened up a little more. My lord, I am ridiculous. I am just a county magistrate. How can I learn anything? Why not? If not, you wouldn't have been able to hold the position of county magistrate for so long. Wuxian Cheng said nothing. In fact, the main reason why he has been able to sit in this position for so long is that he has no background. He wanted to move, but he really couldn't move. When people become officials, they become richer and richer. When he became an official, the poor people in Kawiliu County have stayed here for so long. From being complacent at the beginning to sighing every day and having no rice to cook, he has almost forgotten that he was young at the time and vowed to make a career. Nowadays, people are getting old and can no longer work hard. They don't want to give up on themselves and happily become a corrupt official. At least they won't be unable to afford food. Then he met Ji Chang's. Although I'm a bit stingy, it's not bad to get my salary back. It's better not to continue asking for money. This is a superior official, and it's not good to offend him. The Prime Minister of Wuxian County made the final calculation and bowed to Ji Chang's with a smile. I would like to thank you, sir. If the salary can be paid, I will feel at ease. Seeing that he didn't mention the money they had used to defraud wealthy people, Ji Chang's took the initiative and asked, you don't want to divide the money? Separate ghosts. This Shangguan is so thick-skinned that even if he wants it for a long time, it won't last long. If he continues to ask for it without causing a mess, he might as well accept it as soon as possible. Wu Xiancheng scolded his mother in his heart, but he smiled on his face. My lord, you are joking. When did I want this money? I was just telling my lord about the salary that has not been paid before. Ji Chang smiled with satisfaction and nodded. Wuxian Cheng can indeed withstand the test as I thought. Wuxian Cheng, test. Ji Chang's gave him a yes. That's it. Look. Before, the county government relied on you to run the government. I thought you were good, but I didn't know much about you. I was afraid that you were a corrupt official, so I came up with a way to test you. As a result, Wuxian Cheng really he is not greedy for money and power. As long as he deserves his salary, he doesn't care about anything else. In today's world, there are very few people like Wu Xiancheng who are not blinded by gold and silver. Wu Xiancheng. But if it's a test, sir, do you want those silver coins from the rich family? Ji Chang's gave him a it goes without saying expression. That's because they hid taxes. I'm new here, so I don't want to cause too much trouble, so I just found an excuse to give them a chance to atone for their sins. Tax evasion is tax evasion. Anglo has very strict penalties in this regard, but there are still some people who can't help but be tempted. Most of the rich households in Kawiliu County evade taxes. Wu Xiancheng also knows it. After all, no one comes to check the poor land in Kawiliu County. Naturally, everyone it's free play. But Ji Chang's, a newcomer, found out that these wealthy households were hiding taxes so quickly, which really made the Prime Minister of Wu County confused. Not only was he confused, but he also had goosebumps all over his body. He turned the matter over in his mind. In other words, there was no greed for money from beginning to end. It was just a deliberate show by the new Shangguan to test him. No wonder, he said, why did the magistrate, who was backed by the censor Zhong Chen, still want to get such a small amount of money? It turned out that he just took the opportunity to check whether there were corrupt officials around him, so that he could do what he wanted to do with peace of mind after checking them thoroughly. What a deep scheming, what a powerful method. If it weren't for the fact that he was afraid of offending his superior, so he just surrendered without asking for more money, I'm afraid Master Ji wouldn't be able to spare him lightly. It was obviously not summer, but Wuxian Chen was suddenly covered in sweat from behind. Good risk, good risk. He mistook a good official for a corrupt one and almost surrendered. If he hadn't made the choice with his quick wit and strong desire to survive, it would be hard to say whether he would be dead or not in a few months. It was like walking between life and death. Correct. Wu Xiancheng suddenly became energetic and his pupils tightened. Master Ji is acting like this, is it possible that there is something big going on? Otherwise, he could just give the order directly for what he wanted to do, why would he bother to do such a scene, unless what he is waiting for is people like himself to come and work, and catch them all in one fell swoop. The Prime Minister of Wuxian County gave Ji Chang's a trembling smile. No, his wife's nephew worked as an accountant in a wealthy family's house. He wanted to go home quickly and tell the other party the news so that the nephew could get away quickly and avoid being involved in Master Ji's liquidation. Wuxian Cheng said goodbye in a hurry and left. He told his nephew who worked as the accountant. The accountant was always treated with courtesy by his employer, and he couldn't bear to see his employer suffer a big disaster, so he gritted his teeth and whispered to his employer. The wealthy family was shocked. They hurriedly checked the accounts and calculated the taxes. They wanted to send 10 times the money they had hid in taxes to the county government. They also have in-laws, so this move is naturally too busy for relatives. If relatives come to inquire, can they not tell them? One afternoon passed, and thanks to the mayor of Wu County, at least 3 wealthy families knew that Mr. Ji's previous actions were not greedy for money. He clearly came here to test the liquidation, and he pretended to be a corrupt official so that they would look down upon him and lose their vigilance. How insidious.